All right, welcome everybody. I'd like to call the December 19th, 2022 council meeting to order. I see that we have majority of our council members in attendance. We have two on Zoom, Councillor Mady and Councillor Allard. So welcome from Zoom land. Just a reminder to turn your cell phone on mute if you haven't already. And councillors, we are going to try really hard tonight to make sure that our we're timing ourselves so that our mics show up on our faces. So maybe we'll just take a little bit more time with that. And I would like to read the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Free Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and the Huron-Wyandot peoples. We value the significant historical and temporary contributions of the local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working here on the land from time immemorial. I would also like to announce Antonio Jose and Dorette Caxero. It is their 50th wedding anniversary. So let's just give them a big clap because that's pretty awesome. So happy wedding anniversary, and I hope you have a lovely holiday together. Let's stand for the national anthem. Now we will go to Director Auger for a closed meeting report on December 5th and December 6th.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is just to report out Council's most recent closed meeting sessions. Council met on December 5th at 5 p.m., December 6th at 9 a.m., and tonight, December 19th at 4 p.m. And all three of these meetings were permitted to be in closed session pursuant to section 239, 3.1 to receive education or training. At the December 5th meeting, Council received training on media and communications. December 6th, Council received municipal governance training for elected officials. And this evening, Council received training on EOK Energy Inc. and Town of Essex role as shareholder. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Auger, any declarations of conflict of interest from council members this evening? Okay, seeing none, I need a mover for the adoption of the published agenda. That the published agenda for December 19th council meeting be adopted as presented. Counselor McGuire Blaze, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting for December 5th. That looking for a mover that we adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on December 5th. Be adopted as circulated. Looking for a mover. Counselor Verbeek, supported by Counselor Hammond. Any questions to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Now, next is public presentations. We have several delegations tonight, reminded of the 5-minute mark. And first we will go to Mr. Michael Gomes, owner of 384 Erie View Ave. And he has a request to construct a driveway. So we will allow you to proceed back to the podium back there. And you have a microphone, Mr. Gomes, that you could put on.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello? Okay. So I built a new house on 384 Erie View Avenue. I got all my required permits, my garage permit, my driveway permits. I subsequently had the town out, roads department, to show where they were. And that was approved. Etc. Finally, after calling the OBP as requested to me by someone in the town, despite the fact that I was given assurances that it would be dealt with because people can't park in your driveway, I was forced to call the OPP. Otherwise, I still would be dealing with this issue, having to use my brother's front field access to get on my own property. As such, and the fact that I have a 30-foot wide garage, I want a larger driveway than the 25 feet because the neighborhood that I live in, there is 5 examples of people with driveways larger than 25 feet. These driveways, 2 of them were not even existing. They've been done in the last 2 years, which is well beyond when the development standard was set in the town. The other 3 have been expanded. One this year, the other ones within the last few years. So again, well beyond when the development standard was set. So the idea that they were existing, it's just a material change. They only get to use the 25 feet of their driveway anyways, it doesn't matter, which is illogical at best, is the case right now. So those were the reasons given to me, even though I suggested check the mapping because that's not the case. So all the pictures you see here are showing that the driveways were only recently done. And I gave 2 more examples, one in a new subdivision going in Harrow of a larger driveway with curbs, and one on another road in Colchester with a 55-foot wide cemented driveway, which is also built in 2020. So the idea that these were existing is ridiculous. I also want to make a point that I don't care that people put bigger driveways. That's their business. I'm happy for them. Great for them. But then to turn around and tell me that I have to follow the standard to a T and that I can't have an extra 15 feet while I'm looking right across the road from me and I'm seeing 45-foot driveway with no apron is discriminatory at best. In fact, it's the very definition of discriminatory. So I just wanted to make that point clear that I'm happy the neighbors have it. I'm not here to complain about neighbors. So going through the examples, there's one sheet here that's got all 5 on it. Okay. And you can clearly see the distances, including the one right across from me, that's 45 feet. The one around the corner, that's 32. The person that's beside me, we're the only 2 houses on Erie View on that side, has a double driveway given a permit for it. So a precedent has been set.
So to deny me even a double driveway is, to me, again, discriminatory. And then the other two examples show how driveways have been made larger with gravel, and now they're parking cars and there's a carport, right? So they're being used as a driveway and they weren't there before. In fact, there was fences. So unless they were imaginary fences, there's no way you could put a car there. So they didn't exist. And then these examples show live that they're there with no aprons over and over and over again. You have all the pictures. You can see the GeoCortex base maps from this year, from the two previous years, from 2015 even, how they weren't existing. In fact, there was a fence there. So being told by staff when they are on site that they were existing is insulting, right? When your mapping clearly shows that they weren't, right? And the fact that I'm here doing this, even though the evidence is clear as day, is shocking, really. I also gave two more pictures of the other one in Colchester and the other one in town, because I see we're not really looking at them. I also gave Google Maps showing the fences.
Okay.
Am I 5 minutes up
Yeah,
already?
5 minutes is up.
Holy moly, I didn't even get to the trees.
We do have copies of those pictures. Each council member did get them. You will get a chance to rebut too.
Okay.
We'll let town staff have a turn. We have our chief building official, Kevin Carter, online. So we'll go to Kevin. Mike, you just want to turn off your mic?
Sorry.
Mr. Carter or Mr. Gerard, whoever.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. I think it's best that we start off with Kevin Gerard from Infrastructure.
Mayor. So the situation that we have here is that the delegate has constructed a new home in an existing area. Just to be clear that the town hasn't been acting. I have no actions against Mr. Michael Gomes for being here, for requesting his driveway. The town has not acted in any discriminatory fashion towards Mr. Gomes while we've provided his facts. The new home does need to follow the new development standards manual that was adopted by council. That development standards manual does state within it that the driveway cannot exceed 25 feet in width. So this home in particular, being a new home within the neighborhood, needs to comply to that new development standards manual and needs to comply to the standard of the day. With regards to driveways that are existing, very similar to how the town reacts to other deficiencies within the town's right of way, they are purely reactive. So we rely on complaints to drive investigation of those things. We don't actively go to seek out those types of things. So when a formal complaint is lodged with the town with regards to some kind of action or some kind of deficiency within the town's property, the town reacts to that, and we, if deemed appropriate by the town staff and the bylaw department, issue notice and orders to comply. From there, that's what I can mention for now. What I can do is I can pass it on to our chief building official. It was an on-site meeting that occurred. We can pass it to Mr. Carter there to describe kind of what's occurred to date with regards to bylaw enforcement.
Yes,
Mr. Carter?
Yes, through your mayor. The bylaw department was called out. The OPP showed up. I believe the proponent contacted the OPP as instructed with all the various vehicles parked in front of his property, avoiding him access to his garage. Unfortunately, I was not able to get out there during the OPP presence, but I did show up approximately within an hour later. At which point I tried to mediate between the neighborhood, all involved in the specific site, indicating our development standards manual was 25 feet. The approach onto the property is 25 feet. And at which time, I believe it was one of the owners got a spray can. I asked the owner, Mike Gomes, where did he want his 25-foot approach? He indicated where it was. We got a tape measure, we measured it out. And I informed the neighbor across the street that was parking in front of Mr. Gomes at all times, or mostly at all times, don't park in Mr. Gomes' driveway approach. Hoping this would resolve the issue. It was clearly an attempt to mediate between all neighbors. And that was the gist of my meeting on site, period.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Any questions from council to our administration or to the delegation? Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Curious when, if you could tell me, Director Gerard, when the date was set for this for the standards for the approach?
The current development standards manual was adopted in February of 2022.
Further questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Blaise McGuire.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you. You had said that your neighbors in the area, sorry to the delegate, the neighbors in the area had put a driveway, doubled their driveway this year. Was it before the new Standard Act in February of 2022?
Councillor McGuire Blaise has supplementary.
Through the mayor to Director Gerard. The people he's referencing in his neighborhood, did they approach you for the permit to expand their driveway?
Mayor, I don't have that information here today. If council would like me to investigate permits taken in that area, then we can certainly look into that.
Okay, yes, so February 22 was the development standards policy, and the application or the request came prior to that or after that?
Through the mayor, the request for the driveway width came after the development standards manual.
Okay, follow up. So anybody who may have a driveway with a permit, without a permit that was already in before this policy could be considered grandfathered. Would that be correct?
Through the mayor, that is correct. The development standards manual does apply only to new homes, new development, and new driveway accesses. So any existing entrances that existed before that development standards that were wider than our current standard would be grandfathered in until they made a change.
Further questions from council members? Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Just a quick question. When was your house built and when was the garage built and your cement that when I went out and saw your place, when did you have that cement for your garage put in?
Put in November. House was built this year.
I mean, I went out and viewed the property and I mean, it's a real mess out there. I know these beaches are dicey situations. From my perspective, looking at what he's dealing with, theoretically, you could have, from the picture you showed, cars, boats parked all across his property. Not just, I mean, they might leave a 25-foot driveway, but they can literally park right in his front yard. I think if we give him the 40-foot, I know it goes against the quality standards, but I think sometimes we have to make an exception. And I know we did just not too long ago, and then totally different situation. But in this situation, from my perspective, I think allowing him 40 feet would give him some easeway of not having boats, sea-doos, cars from neighbors parking on his side of the road, just because the road's offset. So it's kind of a bad situation again, and it's unfortunate that it is the way it is. And I think, from my opinion, a 40-foot driveway's, I know it goes against the quality standards, but in some cases we have to make an exception. And this would be one of the ones I feel we should make an exception.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'm certainly not suggesting that we shut down the conversation at this point, but I am going to suggest that, so we've heard from the delegation and we've heard from our staff. And our deputy mayor did go on site and he has some extra pictures to share if anybody's interested. I think we take a little bit of time to digest all this information we've been given before we make a hard and fast. We just learned 2 weeks ago. With it, you know, we feel like we have to make that decision when the delegation is in the room. And I think maybe we just step back for a couple of weeks and digest this before we make a final call. It would be my suggestion.
Mr. Gomes for a rebuttal, and then I will look for a motion from council.
Mr. Gerard. So the development standard, the new development standard was set in February 2022. What was the development standard prior to February 2022, the last one? What was the width of the driveways?
And I'm not sure if you want to answer that now, Director Gerard.
The previous development standards manual did also designate 25 feet.
Thank you. CAO Sweet, did you have anything? Because if not, okay. Councilor Verbeek.
You, Madam Mayor, I'll just make a motion that we table this and bring it back at our next meeting.
Hey, would you like to request,
Defer it.
or would you like to request administration to bring back a report?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Okay.
The motion would be that administration bring back a report on this. So forget the next meeting when they can.
Okay, right now we have a motion. We're looking for a seconder and then we can discuss. Councilor McGuire Blaze. Did you want to just make a comment?
Madam Mayor, I will second it, but I just want to be clear. We're making a motion for them to do a report on permits pulled for driveways in the area.
Mayor Bonnie, from what I'm hearing, a report would come back based on this specific address. In terms of what Mr. Gomes has presented today with administration, with the recommendation, and then council can make a decision at that time. But a formal report in terms of Mr. Gomes' delegation, that's what we'll come back on.
Mike, yep, Mike, yep.
So if I understand through you, Mayor, if I understand correctly, you're doing this in order to access your property due to the multiple parking. Are these parking violations around his property? No. Is there a way that it's possible to make it a violation?
Sure, just turn.
Who do I
Yeah,
ask that?
I will answer that if you
Okay.
you could turn your mic off, maybe. So anytime anybody sees a parking violation, somebody that's blocking their driveway, that would be an OPP call, I believe, right? And so by asking for a report, I think a lot of these questions will be answered in this report that we're getting from administration. They have all the documentation. Deputy Mayor Shepley can send the rest of the pictures. Do you have anything further, Councillor Hammond?
Well, other than putting up no parking signs down the street and stuff like that. I feel it's unfortunate that he has to go to this extent to access his property, and I would think that there would be something in that report that would, rather than making his driveway bigger, he could maybe get some sort of enforcement around his property to negate some of these violations or parking problems that he's being accustomed to, because let's face it, nobody really likes other people's cars parked all over their front yard.
Other questions to the motion, Councillor Verbeek? You made the motion, so speak to it.
Well, through you, Madam Mayor, I just have another question for our delegate while he's in the room. The driveway. So you're looking at, you have your concrete pad in front of your garage is 50 feet at least, right? No? How wide is it? It's only 28 feet across the front of your garage? And so you want to bring that all the way out to the road concrete? I'm just trying to get an idea what you want to do beyond these pictures.
So in this one, you can kind of see the orientation of the properties, how they're on angles, right? So basically, I want to bring the driveway straight out. My garage is 30 feet wide. And then you obviously typically have an apron. So if you added that apron, you're about 40 feet. And this way, when I pull into my property and I'm pulling out of my garage, I'm not looking at the back of people's cars, because that's what's happening right now. Right? So because they could park right behind my apron of the 25 feet. So I'm going around and in. And then in front of my house, if I would do that, they can park there. So now I have tailgates 15 feet from my front door. Right? So now I put dirt and grass back in because I made a mess out of it because I never had access properly. So I dumped trucks and cement trucks made ruts. So I fixed it. But that brings the other question. There's gravel everywhere. And as far as I was told, there was no permits for that. So where's my grass? Right? So there's just a litany of things going on, but I'm here for my driveway. So.
Then Director Gerard, and then we will call the question on the motion.
Thank you to the mayor. Yeah, I want to speak specifically to why you're here, which is the driveway. And we have development standards policies in place for a reason. I guess where my major concern comes is the policy in terms of the width of the driveway has not changed from where it was yesterday versus what it is for the standards of the day. Where the bigger concern with the motion I have is that I don't think there's enough detail in what we're asking administration of. If there is a driveway in one of those examples that we've approved that's wider, and you can have a standards policy that says this is what we're going to do, but can be some exceptions to it. And the delegate may have an exception here. I don't know. But if we've permitted it in the past in his area, then it's something that I'd like to know. That being said, again, we do have the standards policy in place for a reason. So I have no issue with the motion if we can get a little bit more detail.
My point was essentially the same. So just for clarification, because the driveway and the parking matter are completely separate issues. So the driveway itself is governed by the Development Standards Manual. The parking is governed by a parking bylaw 224, which is the parking bylaw for the whole town of Essex. What I would suggest is to deal directly with the delegation's concern about the driveway width, not necessarily the parking, because the parking already has a bylaw and is governed by that bylaw. If council wanted to look at that bylaw, that is something that can be accessed and reviewed by accessing our website and our bylaws on our website. And that could be considered at any future date or at the will of council. However, the parking issue or the driveway issue specifically brought by the delegate, we draft a report that will speak to the standard and the direct concern with Mr. Michael Gomes.
I want Director Auger to read the motion, please, so that council. Oh, okay. All right, let's have him read the motion and then so we all know. And then
Through you, Madam Mayor, as moved by Councillor Verbeek and seconded by Councillor McGuire Blaze, motion to defer the request with direction to administration to return with a report with recommendations on the Gnomes driveway entrance request.
thank you, Councillor Mady.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I just liked what Director Gerard just said. I'm all in favor of if we want to table this and come back to it. But I do believe we have to be very careful because parking out on the beach roads is always a problem. And with our parking bylaw, I think if we open up this can of worms about allowing larger driveways, we might get a lot more of these in front of us. So I'd be really interested to see what the report's going to say. And that's it. Thank you.
they're comfortable with that motion. If you're not, you can make a friendly amendment to it. Oh, Counselor Allard, hi.
Through the mayor, thank you. Question for the delegate. The garage in your property, is it used by large trucks? Do you, are you a trucker or some type that you want that large of a driveway?
Some equipment and work vans that would be nice to have a bigger turn in. Yes.
I have one other question. The picture I'm looking at is that from your garage out to backs of vehicles. Those vehicles are parked on your side in your driveway?
That picture that you're looking at from my garage was before I called the OPP because that was happening. Now there's 1.5 in front of that door instead. Because I do have at least 25 feet as of now, but you see what it looks like
Yeah,
with 25 feet.
I've been out to your house and had a look. I wanted to talk to somebody so I could see what you were looking at, but nobody was home. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, real quick, Mr. Combs.
I just wanted on record that the development standard might be 25 feet now, but it was 25 feet 2 years ago too. And these large driveways that existing, permit or no permit, are there, and the development standard was there and weren't enforced. So unless you plan on ripping those up, it's discriminatory to me because the development standard is the same now as it was then. So, and you let them stand. And those trucks, Essex trucks have been drove by and I pointed them out. So, yeah.
So we have a motion on the table, and when the report comes back, Mr. Gomes, you can come again and speak to the report too. Whatever it says, you're welcome. We will be, we will let you know. We'll let you know when. Okay, council, we have a motion on the table. Everybody's familiar with it because Director OJ just read it. Just looking to see all in favor of that motion. And that is carried unanimously. So thank you for coming. You're welcome to stay, but you don't have to. All right, next we're having a delegation, the president of Heritage Colchester, Perry Basden. He is coming to tell us a little bit about the completion and the repairs of the Colchester Schoolhouse. So welcome, Perry.
And members of council. First of all, I want to clarify one thing. The title, funding and completion of repairs to the Colchester Schoolhouse. No, we haven't got it all done yet. We're just starting. Let's put it that way. My purpose tonight is to give, on behalf of the executive and Heritage Colchester members, our thanks and gratitude to the town of Essex and other organizations who have recently been involved with completing the repairs to the 1952 chimney. It was in drastic need of repairs. A lot of the bricks were falling out of their places. Others was falling off. The top cap was cracked, things like that. Chimney was first put up about 1952, approximately 70 years ago, and it hasn't been used for a good long while, except for roofs of chimney swift. Early in 2022, Heritage Colchester became aware of a grant opportunity for restoring roofs and nesting sites for chimney swifts. The grants became available when Birds Canada, in conjunction with Swiftwatch Ontario, worked with the federal government, Department of Environment and Climate Change, who realized the necessity of protecting the sites being used by the swifts. The swifts are currently listed as a threatened species, which means that they live wild in Ontario, but are likely to become endangered if steps are not taken to address factors threatening it. Some of those factors that are modernization of the brick chimneys by putting in some steel liners, for instance, or demolishing completely as not only being necessary because you use plastic vents on newer furnaces. So that's one reason why we got that one in. Town of Essex, owner of the schoolhouse, were contacted by Heritage Gold Center to see if they were interested in applying for a grant, to provide half the funds to cover the cost of restoration, with the federal government providing the other half. Fortunately, we were able to work with the town of Essex, provide information and history regarding this chimney swift's use of the chimney as a roost, and worked with council and staff members, and particularly Jake Morissette and Mark Tortola, in completing the application form. In the spring of this year, we received word that the application had been approved. Restoration work was then scheduled to be done after the Swifts had left for Peru. Lucky guys. Restoration was completed in early December of this year. On December 1st or thereabouts, Caesar Construction of Harrow began setting up scaffolding and began work on it. In adverse conditions, I might say, with heavy winds that day, a lot of temperature dropping earlier than it usually does, and a little bit of freezing rain as well. So our thanks go to the Town of Essex Council for providing funding to match the amount of the federal grant and to enable a timely restoration of the chimney before it collapsed on the schoolhouse itself. Thank you to the federal government, Department of Environment and Climate Change, for making funds available on this project. And thanks also to Caesar Construction employees who did the physical restoration work so the chimney can continue to be used as Swift roost for many years to come. Now, for our part as Heritage Colchester, we have made a commitment to fulfill a condition of outlined in the grant application, that being monitoring and reporting the use of the chimneys by Swifts over the next 5 years. Heritage Colchester allow the follow the protocols as set out by Swiftwatch Ontario and participating in the spring Swiftwatch counts and file the necessary reports with Swiftwatch Ontario. We're looking forward to future partnerships and collaborations with the town of Essex. As opportunities arise, I would like to take a moment and also at this time to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. That I'm done and I still got time. Any questions?
Rasden, it's always great to get an update and to see your face and hear about all the fun things you're doing out there in Heritage Colchester. Any comments or questions from council members to our delegation? Oh, Councillor Mady.
Sorry.
Hello, and through you, Madam Mayor. Perry, it's great to see you. Sorry I'm not in attendance tonight. You guys do wonderful work out there. Every time I go out there, I'm amazed at how much you're doing and how much fun events you're bringing to the area. Easter egg hunts, the hoedowns, the markets, the community garden there. It's wonderful. I just want to say thank you. And thank you for going after the grants and partnering with us. That's awesome. You went out and took the initiative and went after the money. So that's awesome. Thank you very much. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Mr. Jason.
Councillor Verbeek.
Madam Mayor, through you, just again to echo Councillor Mady, gratitude for all you do out there. And I was really excited when you got the grant. I can tell you I never heard of a Swift until the first time you came before the council last term over the chimney. And now it's really cool that you're going to be participating with is it a global group counting and following these birds? I never even heard of them till you brought it to us last term.
Basically, we work with Swiftwatch Ontario out of Port Rowan, Ontario. Every spring, they set dates throughout Ontario where everywhere that groups want to participate and actually go out half an hour before sunset till about a half an hour after. And we count swifts as they come into chimneys to roost. And the Colchester one, we started this before we were informed as Heritage Colchester. Matter of fact, it was almost 2 years to the day that I came here when the council was declaring the property as surplus. So that was my first initiation into council work here. But hopefully I've improved a little bit, but maybe not a lot. But basically the first year we had about 77 swifts come in on an average night. Anybody is welcome to come out and see them anytime from mid-May till usually late September. And then they start heading south. September is a good time. They usually get quite a flocks of them coming in because they're gathering across the lake. But you're all welcome to go on anytime. No cost required for parking or anything like that. Courtesy of the town of Essex. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Basden, looking for a motion to receive the presentation. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor McGuire Blaze. Any questions? All in favor of that motion? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Perry, for coming out. Delegation Nicole Atkinson. If you would like to approach the mic there, Nicole, to talk about the tree management bylaw.
Through you, Madam Mayor, as a resident of Essex, I had a chance to speak to other residents in regards to the new tree management bylaw. And our hope for this new bylaw is for it not to be too vague in the wording in regards to the instruction, direction, and responsibilities of residents versus the town. We hope it provides enough clear and concise information when it comes to regulating the care, maintenance, protection, removal, and planting of trees within the municipal right-of-ways, private properties, adjacent to town property, as well as standalone town property. Our hope is when residents refer to this bylaw on the town's website, that the language adopted will be clear enough and at a level of understanding for residents to obtain answers they are needing and wanting to know in regards to tree management, so appropriate action can be taken on the residents' part or the town's part. Another thing I personally would like to implement in this bylaw is to have 2 trees planted to the 1 removed. As Doug Sweet mentioned last council meeting, I thought that was a fantastic idea. I am not proposing that the 2 trees be planted in the exact same spot as the removed tree, because I do understand that due to old roots, space, and the future growth of the new tree, that this is highly unlikely. But another place in town could be home to the second tree, such as in our local park, which I feel are underutilized and have a lot of green space, as well as a lack of shade near the playground equipment where parents sit and watch their children play. I think this would be a beneficial implement to aid in more tree canopy coverage in our town, and a proactive and progressive move. And it also has been adopted by other municipalities. Our climate change adoption plan, only calls for 250 trees to be planted in 5 years from the year 2021 to 2026. When I first read this, I thought it was a typo, as 50 trees per year for 5 years seems to be really low in comparison to how fast our Earth is negatively declining due to climate change. And on top of climate change, we have development growth, with trees being removed to build residential neighborhoods and industrial buildings, as well as clearing ditches and along creeks, which I know is a necessary evil, so we have proper drainage. We as a town need to make sure we are taking care of our planet by doing our part by planting as many native trees as possible to reduce our carbon footprint, as well as helping sustain our local wildlife, especially in our area since we're very rural. All wards fall into that, rural areas. We need places to live, clean air to breathe, and so does our wildlife. 1 single tree can offset up to 1 ton of CO2 in its lifetime. Also in this tree management bylaw, I would like to know if it will contain the information to explain how areas such as the trail and Sadler's Park that had many trees removed to help prepare for the new subdivision will be replaced or replanted. Residents understand why the trees were removed, but still are upset because the ambience, the aura of the trail just diminished, and homes for our birds and wildlife are gone. But what they don't know is if the trees will be replanted in this area, and if they will be replaced, were the trees removed counted so we know how many to replant. And then there was also a couple concerns brought up in the last council meeting. Councillor Kimberly Verbeek mentioned trees being removed along creeks. Councillor Katie McGuire Blaze mentioned trees being removed along ditches. So I was hoping that the tree management bylaw will include enough information so we as residents can understand how this process works. And last but not least, I would like to ask administration if the town of Essex, along with the other wards, ever had a tree canopy coverage inventory done. And if not, if it's possible to get one completed in the near future, and was one done, or what was done, how we came up with the 200 projected trees pledge for our climate change adoption plan. Thank you.
Then, any comments from fellow councillors to our delegation here? Councillor Verbeek.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Nicole, for coming tonight. And I don't disagree with anything you said. And I'm really glad that you brought this out. My question, I guess, would be to the CAO and can we look at some of her suggestions and some of our suggestions and come back with a few changes? Like, I mean, I'm looking at 6.1.1. It would be as simple as changing to replant the minimum of, it says minimum of 1 tree. Could we, is there an appetite to change that to 2? And a policy to look at replacing some of the trees that we take out along our ditches and our creek beds, because we do, when it's absolutely necessary. We have to clear them, but we take out a lot of trees. And that isn't mentioned here in the reforestation section of this.
Have our CAO, Doug Speed, and then our Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. Your last question, I'll defer to our Director Morissette because he did an amendment. Your question in terms of 1 tree or 2 trees, that is a level of service. And there's a cost to that. So if that's something that council is looking at, I would recommend that be deferred to budget deliberations because it's an increased level of service and there is a cost, right? I'm not saying it's not a good idea. It's a great idea, but it's depending on where you want that level to be. In terms of, before I go to you, Mr. Morissette, Ms. Atkinson also mentioned in Silas Park on some of the trees. I think you're referring to the trail along, that would be through IRCA. That's not town owned or maintained. So, so that would be a question for IRCA, how they're doing that. So
after tonight, we'll have some IRCA reps in the room, and then we can task those IRCA reps with knocking on IRCA's door. Director Morissette.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Bondi. So a few points just to touch on what was said. So the first one, it was brought up as well. The reforestation section 6.1.1 says a minimum of 1 tree. We are always looking for additional locations to plant trees. It's not just something where we go, oh, that's it. We're only planting 1. So let's say in the middle of a park, we take down a tree and we see that there could be 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 trees. That is something we are considering and taking our budgets into consideration. As CAO Sweet said, there is a service level that we do provide. We're looking at it as we don't want to remove a tree and just not do anything with that tree. So that's why we put a minimum of 1 tree where it gives administration and staff the ability to add on if we do have the budget and the land available to do so. We also don't want to have an expectation from the public where we say, oh, we have to have a minimum of 2 or more trees, but then we don't have the spacing to put those trees. So if you look at it in 10, 15, 20 years, where potentially this bylaw could still be in effect, you might have a compounding situation where that 1 tree now became 2 trees, but then you remove those trees and they become 4 trees. So when you compound it, then you're looking at a significant level of service change, and it could really landlock you in a situation like that. So that's some of the considerations that we took into place while we were looking at that. As for the public and council that aren't aware, we do a couple different tree programs in the town. So we do our legacy tree planting every year, where we work with school boards to get some trees put on their properties. As well, we do a memorial tree planting where members of the public are able to come to administration and they sponsor a tree. So with that, the town puts in the tree, we maintain that tree, and they get a little plaque showing in memory of and whatever they're looking for. So that is a cost recovery model that we have where it doesn't affect the service level for the town. We are doing a tree evaluation in 9 parks this year. So we have an arborist on staff that's one of his tasks for early this year is to evaluate the trees. So with that, one of the big things that I'm looking at with the staff is if we see a tree that's going to come out, it may be identified that there's issues with that tree and we know 5 years, 10 years down the road that tree may be coming out. We may plant the tree now with the expectation that it's going to have time to grow and get a little bit better within that 5 or 10 year plan. So that's another consideration that we are looking at. And just in terms of service level, some of the things that may not be noticed or known what goes into a new tree is we have extra staff time for planting it and putting it in. Obviously, the cost of the tree, there's extra time that the staff have to go out and water the trees, maintenance, long-term tree trimming, all that stuff. And then there's the end of life cycle costs for the tree. So there's cutting down a tree and removing it, and then the stumping that goes along with it. So those things could become very, very expensive. And it's not that we don't want to have the trees, it's just with the making it an expectation of having more than one tree could become tough and a very costly endeavor for the town if that was approved. But again, if that's the appetite of council, we'll do what we can to make it work. But as CAO Sweet mentioned, it would be more of a budget deliberation setting to push that forward.
Director Morissette, can you please just touch on, we did have some comments at the ditches and the drains.
Yeah, my apologies on that one. I did have that down. So added in the bylaw from an amendment from last time was 6.1.2. So basically that amendment would be at the sole discretion of the manager of operations and drainage or their designate trees removed from as a result of maintaining drainage infrastructure in accordance with the Municipal Drainage Act may be exempt from tree replacements as described in section 6.1.1. So that was there was looking for clarity on that. So that was the clarity that was provided. And Director Gerard may be able to weigh in on that as well.
Care to elaborate or share? Thank you.
Yes, through the mayor. Yeah, we spoke with our operations team and drainage team with regards to trees that are removed from drains and ditches. And we felt the need to exempt or give the flexibility to operational staff to utilize the bylaw in the way that they need to. Mostly because municipal drains serve many purposes, but one of the main purposes is agricultural property. They travel through municipal property, municipal right of way, as well as private property. Some of the feedback that we receive from our operational team is that many of the farmers or many of the landowners that have those ditches and drains running through their properties may not want trees. They may not want to use up prime agricultural land to plant trees. So we needed that flexibility built into the bylaw to allow us to use our discretion for that.
Please.
Thank you through you, Chair. I understand that the farmer doesn't want it on their property, but I don't know exactly where in here, you do say that you can plant the tree elsewhere and it doesn't have to go directly where you remove the tree. I understand that ditch trees, you could have to remove 30 ditch trees when you're doing a clearing. Could we not make it a policy where when we're doing X amount of space or X amount of clearing, we're going to plant 5 trees? I mean, it just makes sense. You're disrupting the wildlife that's growing in those ditches. So you're removing homes for birds and squirrels and chipmunks and all of those things, even though they're in the ditch, that's still wildlife. Could we not plant, say, X amount of trees per kilometer of ditch?
So a couple of points to make to your comments is that you're correct. A municipal drain typically has a large amount of trees. Those trees typically are not, let's call them a prime species of trees. They tend to be seedlings that are picked up through the transfer of seeds through the water in the drain. So they're typically not, very high class of tree, not very wanted type of tree, more invasive. The other point to make too is with regards to species within those drains. So whenever a municipal drainage project is completed, the drainage report and the drain has to comply. The works have to comply with any regulations by Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Ministry of Environment. We consult OMAFRA, everybody that's involved as a regulatory authority to ensure that there's no species that are within there that are endangered and that no habitats are destroyed. So everything is vetted through higher regulatory bodies before work like that is completed. If we were to replace trees as part of a municipal drainage project, those costs would need to be borne by the drain owner. That's another piece of the puzzle that needs to really be considered. Is that the way that the municipal drainage process works is that water that sheds from upstream is billed to those property owners. So although the impact of that tree may be on a specific property, landowners upstream of that ditch need to pay for any works that occur to that drain. We need to be very sensitive as to what we allocate costs to in drains and how we disperse those costs to our residents. As Director Morrison had mentioned, there is a maintenance cost to those things as well. So whenever we may have a one-time cost today for planting those trees, but in a municipal drainage situation, we're not imposing those additional costs on the town of Essex per se, but on the residents that own that drain. So I just want to stress the importance of creating that flexibility within the policy. We look at every situation on a case-by-case basis. Not every area is going to be requiring a tree or can fit a tree. That's why we provided some flexibility on where that tree could be planted. But we did have a lot of sensitivity as how the town pays for those trees and how trees are dispersed for cost amongst other residents as well.
Mr. Gerard, for that good explanation. It helps, making cutting down a tree a little bit easier to understand, because I'm really grateful that this council is having a healthy conversation about trees. We have Deputy Mayor Shepley and then Councillor Verbeek.
Very similar to what you said about the extra expenses to the landowners and the fact that at any given point in time, in a year, 100 trees could pop up in a ditch. That was just the expense of having to plant a tree for every time we're going to take one down would just be enormous. And I think for that alone, we just got to forget even looking at the ditch bank trees.
Through you, Madam Mayor, so just to hit on a whole bunch of things that have just come across the room. For starters, I've talked to many farmers and landowners that have had their ditches clear cut or their creek and aren't happy at all about it because they believe that the tree roots are retaining the soil, the soil to their workable land. So, I mean, not every homeowner is happy to have all their trees clear cut. I really like that Councillor McGuire Blaze just came to threw that out there. And I'd like to investigate that idea that, yes, of course, the seedlings, you could clear cut a kilometer of ditch on my road. It's happened, and take out hundreds of trees because of all the seedlings, different sizes, some less desirable than others, right? But so for that kilometer, we commit to planting 5 trees somewhere else. I'm not one for one along the ditches and creeks, but we should maybe possibly address that. And I'd love to see the 2 in there, and maybe it is a budgetary item. Because honestly, I read another article last night in my O Canada magazine that comes, and there are in Canada some municipalities that are actually at the last couple of budget sessions looking at diverting more money out of hard infrastructure into trees and greenery to address the environmental issues that we're all facing. I have an appetite to look at replacing some of those trees we whack in the ditch, and maybe deferring to more budgetary discussion.
I think that that might be a topic we could discuss at one of our first roundtable to give it a hearty conversation. Councillor Hammond.
Through you, Mayor. The other question I have regarding like when we had the incidents with the ash borers and stuff is there anything in our bylaw that addresses invasive species, taking out whole species of tree or anything like that?
Director Morrison.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So there's not anything necessarily specific in there, but that is one reason why we would want to diversify the amount of trees and the type of trees that we put in different areas. We don't want to just continue putting the same trees, excuse me, especially in the same area locations because of that reason. So diversity is very important and a consideration that we do have. One other factor that I do want to put a plug in for the community services master plan again, as I have been doing quite frequently. We do have a landscape architect on the team that's working with us. So that is definitely something I'm going to be speaking to her about, is it with all of our different properties where areas would be recommended for additional trees so that we can take that into consideration for our inventory.
Good conversation, and my brain is coming up with, can we do challenges to get private landowners to plant more trees too? Tree challenge out there, look at tree sponsors, more of like spreading the word about our memorial tree program, looking into the canopy coverage conversation, maybe at our strategic plan, and lots of little things. So I thank you for coming forward. I am looking for a motion to receive the delegation of Ms. Atkinson, supported by or moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Hammond. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. So here we have bylaw 2205, looking for a mover on bylaw 2205, that being a bylaw to authorize and regulate the planting, maintenance, and removal of public trees, including the cleanup of debris falling from such within the municipal boundaries of the town of Essex, to be read a third and final time. So we can just decide to pass this for a final time tonight. We can always come back and tweak it at a later date. This way we have something in place. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor McGuire Blaze, any questions? All right, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. We are moving on to our, thank you, Ms. Atkinson. Good conversation. We are moving on to our last delegation of this evening. I almost said like Councillor or Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. That's weird. So weird. We have Steve Bjorkman going to discuss the Essex Center Streetscape with Council.
I think the last time I was on this side of the table was about 10 years ago when we were pitching the streetscape, myself and Chris Magor sitting in the front row there when this all began. But Mayor Bondi, Council and Administration, thank you for allowing me the time to be here, to be on the agenda tonight and to speak to this issue of the Essex Center Streetscape. First thing I'd like to address is the issue of the ownership of the streetscape plan. This council doesn't own it. The last council didn't own it. I for sure don't own it. This was developed by the residents, business owners, and commercial property owners in the town of Essex. We had tremendous consultations, open houses, one-on-ones, workshops. We had a very good process to get the people's ideal of what they were looking for. I think the only person on the decision-making table today is Mayor Bondi, who was at the decision-making table when that started. I was here as the chair of the BIA, and it's that long ago that this went on. Secondly, some history. 10 years ago, the BIA approached the town to partner in some renewal projects through street furnishings, wayfinding signage, planters, and development of the silo district. That's how far back the silos were still up when we were talking about this plan to start with. That was the start of the streetscape plan and our CIP programs. At the time, we believed that due to the cost, we would have to build it in stages, but we wanted a cohesive finish. So the entire street was designed so that at the end of the day, wherever we started or finished, we would have a street that flowed seamlessly and looked like it belonged there. The business community through the BIA has continued to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in the core throughout the last decade. Street furnishings, holiday and winter lighting, parquet, Heritage Garden Pavilion, and still partnering as we put the washrooms finally into the park, which will allow people and allow families to stay downtown and enjoy the amenities. Individual business and property owners have enthusiastically participated in the CIP program and have invested heavily in the vision of the renewal in our downtown business district. Much of this was done in anticipation of the upcoming streetscape improvements. And now the town is experiencing unprecedented growth, and with that, the need for services and amenities. Fun and exciting events that the recent Christmas market, like the Christmas market that we recently held in the park. More and more of these things are going to be needed as our community grows. With the new proposed flex street design, events in Heritage Park will easily spill out onto the sidewalks of downtown without the need to cut off our traffic flow. Why is that? Because the Talbot Street will become pedestrian friendly and businesses will be able to set out goods and services without the trip hazards of a curb. The plan is about more than an upgrade to our existing commercial core. This is about a total transformation resulting in a town center that residents and businesses will be proud to be a part of. This is an investment that will pay dividends for decades, not just in dollars, but a sense of place and a sense of pride. You as council have an opportunity that may not return for a long time. Not to mention close to $1 million in grants that can only be used for this project. I understand the financial and political pressures that you're weighing out at this time. Your next order of business tonight is to address the motion to approve option 3B, which includes rescoping the streetscape. My fear is that anything left off the original plan will have little chance of being revisited. Therefore, if 3B becomes the chosen option, I would encourage you to make a friendly motion, a friendly amendment, that administration come back with a report that lays out potential funding and timelines to complete the transition areas of Talbot Street. It's also going to be a great place to plant trees. So thank you for your attention and for your service to the community. Thank you.
You, Mr. Bjorkman, for that. That was great. That's, made us, that's why we're here, right? It's good for the little history lesson. I appreciate it myself. Comments or questions from council members to our delegate? If not, we'll have a motion to receive, and don't go far because we're still talking about. Motion to receive our delegation from Mr. Steve Bjorkman regarding Essex Center Streetscape. Councillor Verbeek and Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any questions? All in favor? Carry unanimously. Okay, now we're going to our unfinished business. Capital Works and Asset Management, our Essex Center Streetscape tender results. At the December 5th council meeting, council deferred the consideration of the proposed motion. So this motion here is already on the floor. Okay, sure. So we have the motion on the floor that council approved with proceeding option 3B, that council direct administration. You can read it there, it's all there. So we'll go to we'll go to Director Gerard.
Through the mayor. Yes, I just wanted to provide a quick update. Director Jarusovic and I decided that it might be prudent since we met with a lot of the councilors individually at the request of council following our last presentation and the last report. And there were many comments and questions that came up. It was a very good discussion, lots of questions. But I thought it'd be very relevant to provide some of those answers and some of the commentary the council as a whole to consider, because there was some very good discussion. The first thing I wanted to bring up was that the figures in the report were created as an estimate only. So when you see option 3B, for instance, and you see that Talbot Street was considered from Arthur to Cameron, for instance, those were general limits that we provided. The rescoping of the project, should council decide to proceed with option 3B, will tell us exactly where those limits will be. We have to look at it from an engineering perspective. Where is the best place to end underground infrastructure? Where is the best place to end street lighting? Things like that. So it's not an exact limitation, but I did want to bring that to all of council's attention. The second is that there was a general consensus with the individual councilors regarding the needs of the town as a whole. So looking at replacement projects, replacement reconstructions, things like that. The projects that have been on the books for quite some time and have been in discussion, for instance, we have in the 2022 budget included for design is the Irwin Avenue project and also the Walnut Street South project in Harrow. The town has looked at this from a little bit of a different perspective from the needs of from a replacement perspective. The needs of Irwin and Walnut and those other streets that need to be completed are all part of our asset management plan. Those projects are included in our asset management plan. There's a funding model for them. They're to be looked at as a replacement asset. When we look at the Essex Center streetscape, what we need to consider is that this is an investment into our downtown core. This is an investment to improve economic development, to beautify our town, create places for people to gather, to shop, diversify the community, diversify the types of businesses, and improve vacancy rates in our downtown core. That's something that I really wanted to stress to council, was that you need to really look at this as from a different perspective than the replacement needs of the town. Obviously, there'll be different models and different things that come up as part of budget discussions, but it is something that we wanted to tell you that this is a different type of investment into our town than just a replacement project. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this project has been in the works since 2013. So we have a streetscaping theme that was completed in 2013 that was vetted by the public, businesses, external stakeholders beyond the town of Essex, town administration of the day, past council members. So this is not something that we're necessarily looking to recreate the wheel on. The wheel has been in motion for quite some time. So the need for investment, the need for the beautification, the need for the streetscaping has been identified by our residents, our stakeholders, and our businesses. The other thing I wanted to mention is that there's been a significant amount of commentary about debt. And I'm obviously not going to step outside of my expertise here, and we'll let Director Jarusovic speak to that. But the most important thing to note is that when administration creates a recommendation, it's vetted with the best possible expertise that we can provide you. Expertise from an engineering perspective, from a financial perspective, and history and experience that we've garnered through the town and our professional experience. So when we put a recommendation in front of you, you can be certain that that recommendation is with the best intention and the best confidence in that recommendation. And lastly, there was a lot of commentary and concerns with regards to how the entire project would be completed. If we only completed 3B, will we be missing out on the other 3 pieces or the other 2 pieces? And when will they ever get completed? My recommendation to this comment is and was fairly consistent, was that option 3B was the most fiscal and responsible decision that the town administration could put in front of you to consider. What I would recommend in addition to that is to direct administration to write a report and develop a funding model and some scenarios for council to consider to complete the streetscape beyond option 3B if council decided to go with that option. And then finally, before I do pass it on to Director Jarusovic to speak a little bit to the financing and debt, I just wanted to take a second to remind council that we do have an open contract here with the contractor who is the lowest bidder on this project. Because of the irrevocable period on the tender, we are recommending that a decision made here tonight, whether at a minimum, at least whether or not we're going to be proceeding with option 1 and 2 and keeping the contract as we have tendered it, or option 3 or 4 and canceling the tender. So that we are faced with that decision here tonight, that we do have to make that decision. So from there, I'll pass it on to Director Jarusovic.
Director Gerard.
Thank you, through the chair. As Director Gerard said, just to provide a bit more context on the debt scenarios that were listed within the report, it is important to note the following few points. The project does not have a tax impact for 2023. So the project would be anticipated to be complete in 2024, and that is when the town would realize any potential tax impact through an increase in debt payment. With option 3B, there would be a forecasted net increase to debt of $420,000 approximately. And as Director Gerard touched on, council and administration must be cognizant of the funding model of this particular project and of future particular projects. So the streetscape had minor portions of asset management funding, right? Mainly Victoria, that was funded through asset management reserves or accounts. And essentially debt not acquired does not equate to using that debt on other types of projects. So if the debt financing is recommended, it's mainly recommended from an administrative standpoint for new projects, and replacement projects would be recommended, as Director Gerard said, through our other asset management or capital reserves. Option 3B was the recommended option as it presented a level of debt that allowed for other potential debt-funded projects within this term of council to be feasible as well. Thank you.
Director Jarusovic, any questions, comments from council? This is the night we've all been waiting for. Yeah, Councilor Guerin.
Yeah, I'll start it off. Well, I want to thank Mr. Brookman for coming again and being a delegate and giving the history on it. And he's correct. I mean, it seems like eternity we've been talking about it. And we're in a situation, but I think we can get there. I still believe that the streetscape is needed. It's an investment, as Director Gerard was saying. We have a funding model in place. 9.3 million is already budgeted, including Victoria. And the driving force behind this project is economic more so than anything, but we also have realized that our roads and infrastructure are nearing their end of their useful life expectation too. So there's an opportunity to try and take care of both concerns at one time. And with obviously the cost of 9.3 million as compared to the new cost of 15 million, we're in a predicament. The entire investment, the project's been vetted by the public. Much of the time, money is spent. We have grant money in place. So in my eyes, the time to do this is now. The question is, I guess, is this a want or a need? And in my eyes, it's to me, it's a need. It's the future is coming, and we're going to have a lot more replacement costs associated with it. Our downtown core, a lot of the residents in town have said, we want what Kingsville has, we want what Amherstburg has. Well, they both, those municipalities invested in streetscape projects in their downtown cores. And I really believe truly that if we put the investment into our downtown core, we'll attract those types of businesses. The plan 3B, it makes sense. It's fiscally responsible. And it definitely will support that option because I don't think we can get there for the entire project unless someone else around this table has another plan. But I do think that it's imperative that, whatever motion is out there, I'll only support one that has an end plan for finishing the rest of it. And it needs to be in a timely manner. So that I appreciate all the work administration has done on it because I know it's been a lot. And I know you guys see the same issues as we're seeing, but I'm anxious to hear everyone else's thoughts on it, but that's where I stand on it today. Thanks.
Yep, Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. There was a tough decision to make myself also, and I had a long talk with Gerard and Katie, and one of my concerns was for the merchants that were, whose businesses would be impacted the most during this streetscape plan, stuff like that, and coming out of COVID, because I know in Harrow it was, we're just getting out of COVID and now this. But one thing I did find out from talking to merchants from Harrow is that construction was very conscious of their need for access and stuff like that. And the majority of them thought that they did a good job in making sure that access was provided on a regular basis. And it went rather well. And the fact of the matter is, maybe it's not a good time, but it's never going to be a good time. So you need it. So we should do it somehow. And again, with the same resolution as when is it going to be? Let's start it. And get some sort of indication of when we can have it completed. And that's basically my point of view.
We have Councillor Allard.
To the mayor, I just want to thank Mr. Borkman for coming in and speaking. His time on council is very valuable. And I think that the streetscape, there's elements in there of safety and elements in there of taking care of business underground and the infrastructure. I have been battling this through my mind for a week now, and I don't know if it's the right time, but I think that if we don't do it now, we won't have the money to do it later. Thank you.
Allard, Councillor McGuire Blaze.
Thank you through the chair. I agree that this is something that has to get done. I don't want to choose the option that we scrap the entire project. I do like the idea of 3B, and I just want to propose another option. And I don't know if it's possible. So I'm hoping Director Gerard can help us out here. We had spoke, and I don't remember your complete answer, but what if we did from Maidstone to Victoria instead of the actual center? I feel like that's a part of our town that has been neglected with multiple vacant buildings. And I'm wondering if we did that section first and everyone saw the benefits of it, those buildings being leased out again and things happening in that section of town, the residents might have an easier understanding of when we do phase 2 and phase 3. I also think that with 600 new homes coming in on Maidstone, everyone's going to be using that Maidstone Talbot corner to come into town. It might be really nice to have it look beautiful and like right on when everyone's turning that corner, and we have a beautiful street, and then you come to Victoria and you're in our town center, and for all intents purposes, our town center is beautiful. I mean, I don't really see a huge need for the update. And then you would leave town and you'd come down here towards Foodland, and it's more residential in this area. It's just an option. I don't know if it's something that we can do. I don't know if we can use the grant money for that end of town, but it is a different option. I think it would be a little cheaper for our pocketbook.
Councillor McGuire Blaze, Director Gerard.
Through the mayor. So in the streetscape, the Essex Center streetscaping theme, there were 2 areas identified, well, technically 3 areas identified as part of the streetscape plan. It was the downtown core, the transitional areas, and the silo district, which obviously no longer exists. So right now what we did is we completed the Essex streetscape design in accordance with that streetscaping theme, which included the downtown core area, which is generally what we're proposing as part of option 3B. So Talbot Street from Arthur to generally Victoria, Cameron area. And then the transitional areas being the outside areas of Talbot from Arthur to Fairview and from Victoria to Maidstone. In terms of completing the streetscape design and rescoping to the specific area of the downtown core, we feel that because of the business density and the nature of the downtown core, the Flex Street concept, that there's more value for the town's dollars in terms of an economic development impact. Whereas the transitional areas would be, type of bonus to that. In addition, if we were to complete the project as a whole, in all likeliness, that downtown core area would phase 1 of the construction. We wouldn't complete the outside areas first. We would actually work from the inside and work our way out. So from a constructability point of view, it would actually make a lot more sense to complete the downtown core area as opposed to the transition area. The other thing I wanted to mention was that you also discussed the need for with all the homes and growth that the town is experiencing, the impact to the intersection at Maidstone and Talbot. Just for your own information and council's information, is that council and administration have identified that intersection as a growth-related need. We actually completed a traffic study that completed by an engineer that identified what the improvements of that intersection would be. We've started works on that project, but we have identified that as a growth-related need and will be coming in future years when funding becomes available and we can complete that project. Does that answer your question? I hope.
Thank you very much. So we could still do it and still receive the grant money if we decided to do the transition period first. You're recommending us not do that just because the town center is where you would start anyways. I understand that, but it is a possibility that we could still use the grant money. But how far along are you anticipating that Maidstone intersection? Like, is that going to be within the next eight years, which is when I would assume we would want to see the entire project be complete? So is that something that we can say, well, the Maidstone intersection is going to be completed in 2026. I'm just throwing a year out there. And when we do that intersection, we can then do phase 2 of the Essex streetscape.
And then I think Director Drusevich has her hand up.
So we're essentially keeping an eye on that intersection to identify the trigger and the need to update that. In addition, we know that that project is identified as approximately $1.5 million project in 2020 dollars. So we have to balance the need of fiscal responsibility, growth, asset management, economic development when we're talking about this scenario. I don't have a specific timeline for the Maidstone Arthur intersection. However, I can tell you that works have begun on that as we proceed towards the design phase. There's property acquisition that's required, there's detailed design that's required, and then the actual construction of the project. So it would come as part of a 3-phase project. We started the first phase and we'll be proceeding to the next phase once the last is completed. So it's underway, but I don't have a specific timeline for you.
Through the chair to Councillor McGuire Blaze. The grant currently defines a location, and it is defined as the downtown core of Essex. So we wouldn't be able to give you confirmation tonight. However, we also have to complete construction work before February of 2024. So if that section was delayed and they didn't define the new section as downtown, it could be in question.
Any other questions, comments from Council? Councillor Verbeek?
For you, Madam Chair. I just want clarity from Director Gerard about, the infrastructure under the road, because I've heard in the past meeting and then tonight, and I'm like, it's not at risk of, collapsing tomorrow, right? Because that's the conversations, I'm not having a lot of them, but the ones that I am have said, well, what is it? Is it imminent that we address this because of the infrastructure under the road, or is it fine as is? I understand myself that the importance of this project is about to improve our economic development, and it's not about what's going on under the road, but I have had residents ask for some clarity on that. So I just wonder.
So when the streetscape project was identified for detailed design and approved by council, administration undertook some investigatory work. So we reviewed, we looked at the storm sewers, the sanitary sewers, the water main, and we identified essentially what would the life cycle be remaining on those assets. When we evaluated the streetscaping itself, we expect that project to last for approximately 30 years. What the trigger is for replacing the underground infrastructure is to get us beyond that 30 years. So there is infrastructure that needs to be replaced to ensure that we don't have those situations where infrastructure is collapsing and failing and we have to go back into the streetscape area or the downtown core and fix infrastructure after we've invested, $9 million into the streetscaping project. So that was the rationale behind replacing the infrastructure in the road, not because it's imminent failure, but it could be within the time frame that we expect the streetscape to last for.
Mr. Gerard, we have Councillor Mady.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. So what I'm kind of hearing is that I don't think any of us want to go with the full project, or we understand that we have to be a little fiscal here. So we're going to get it rescoped. Is there any chance that we can have 2 rescoping come back to us? Kind of like Victoria, we all know has to get finished. And then kind of which train, do we turn left or right at the end of Victoria? Do we work out towards the Maidstone intersection, or do we work back towards the downtown? And get a cost on both of those in today's dollars. And then we can actually weigh those apples and apples together instead of thinking that, we're going to come in close to budget and redo the entire downtown.
Thank you, Councillor Mady. I think that if we do ask, my first gut is telling me it'd be double the quote to get double the versions, but I will defer to Director Gerard.
That is true. So, I mean, there would be additional expenses incurred for engineering expenses and looking at those different alternatives. The other point I need to make is that, as Director Jurusevich had mentioned, there is a time frame in which we are required to spend our grant funding dollars. So I would recommend that, you know, we don't delay necessarily any further, as we could run the risk of losing those potential grant dollars. In addition, there are still material supply shortages as a result of the pandemic. Our intention is that once the project is awarded, that we would order those materials as quick as possible to ensure that we would meet our timeframes for the completion of the project. So any further delay at looking at scenarios could potentially put the town at risk of losing out on grant money.
Supplementary, Councillor Mady.
Yeah, thank you through you, Madam Mayor. But we don't know if I heard Director Jurusevich correctly, we don't know for sure if we can include that stretch from Victoria to Maidstone as part of it and keep our grant money. So shouldn't we at least look into that? Thank you.
Mady, I will go to Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Okay, so I'm probably not going to be popular tonight. I hope we're still friends after Steve. I know that we don't own this, but we own the decision and the repercussions of the debt we're about to take on. I struggled with it as a business owner, as a counselor. I got to look at everybody as a whole. This has turned into a money-eating machine from 2013 to now. $4.5 million back then to what we're looking at today. And we don't really even know what the number is. It's just a guesstimate. And based on everything I've been seeing so far, every council meeting, we've only had 2, and I see a couple of them in tonight. Budget requests for more money. And I know this is going to come back for more money later on. And I really have a hard time accepting this. I know a lot of business owners that I've talked to. I walked up and down the street, talked to every business owner that I could reach. Many of them said, yeah, do it. We want to see the whole thing done. Well, we can't do that. Some said, don't do it at all. You're going to kill us. Some of us will survive. It'll be fine. I don't think it's going to be a business destroying venture, but I worry about the debt we're about to take on, and I worry about the ramifications of it. So for me, for tonight, I'll be voting to cancel the whole project, as I feel that grants come and go. We'll find others. I know that we're at risk of maybe I heard that we might not get grants going forward if we cancel it. I don't know for sure that that'd be the case. But for me, it's a no at this point in time. That's it.
I just want to point council's attention to the agenda, because we are bringing back a motion to the floor, and the motion was actually moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, seconded by Councillor Mady in the last meeting. So at this point, I believe Deputy Mayor Shepley, and that was to get it on the floor to discuss it and also to support all the recommendations. Is that correct, Mr.? Okay, so at this point, Deputy Mayor Shepley, I would imagine after your most recent comments there, you would like to rescind that motion. Is that what we would do? Withdraw that motion? Okay, and so with that, Councillor Mady, your seconding of that motion, I would say falls. So now we have no motion on the floor regarding the Essex Center Streetscape. Councillor McGuire-Blaise?
I think I'd like to put the motion on the floor to do 3B and have administration come back to us with a report on when the rest of the project can get done.
Seconder, Councillor Guerin. Comments to the motion? I will. I understand thank you, Ms. Brown. I understand where our deputy mayor is coming from. This is a very big decision in a very new council in a very short period of time. But I have, as Steve Bjorkman has said, I have sat here for a long time, and I've seen the community put in hours of time, consultants right from 2013. So to throw all of that out, we are invested already $600,000 into this project. So if we walk away tonight, we lose that. We lose all of the hours of public consultation, which hours are money when we talk about staff hours too. We lose the grant, and we lose the expectation to the public that we're going to have a streetscape in Essex like we have in Harrow. You know, and I understand debt financing. Like, I've been a single mom half my life, so I understand how times are tough. But I view this as a project that we are going to pay off. It's like buying a car or buying a house. It's going to be like a mortgage payment. And I think that the value is going to be there. When I ran in the election, people said to me in Essex, they said, "Oh, you made Harrow beautiful. Can you make Essex beautiful too?" So it is, you know, I don't want us to be that municipality that one end has a streetscape and the other end doesn't. So I think that our administration at times, we're going to have to just trust their recommendations. And I think they knew that this was a hard decision too. And they put the pencil to the paper. They came back with several options that kept the debt still in a comfortable range. And going back into the reports that I have from debt financing for the last couple of years, they've built in this model. So is it a little bit higher debt than we'd all like to have? Absolutely. But are we going to get a beautiful downtown that's going to be an economic driver for our businesses? Yes. And for people to say that we haven't achieved anything, you know, we're not getting economic return on investment. Look at what happened to the Harrow Antique Store. You know, we went from having a store that probably brought in, you know, $4,000 a month in taxes, and now it's probably going to bring in, you know, $25, $30 a year or whatever. My math isn't great, but you understand what I'm saying. We have always committed to saying we're going to invest in our downtown core, and the businesses are going to meet us halfway, and they have. So I think it's too much to throw out the window if we don't go forward tonight. I understand our backs are up against the wall, but the previous two councils and administration and the residents and the business owners have done a lot of the work here. We just have to kind of at some point trust the process. So looking to see what council's thoughts are on this motion.
For you. Well said. I agree with all points. And I just think on the motion, I like this, a friendly amendment, because I believe there's still two parts of the old motion that are imperative that they be included in here. And that would be that council direct administration to cancel RFT ID 22020, and that we award Stantec Consultant Limited the additional funds that they require to complete it.
Motion, Deputy Mayor Shepley.
I'm going to point out again, before you guys make your decision, this is an estimate. The cost is going to come back higher. And I know in the last meeting, I even made the point saying that it's never going to be cheaper. I've had a chance to rethink that, and I don't believe the labor aspect of it's ever going to go down. Labor prices go up. They generally don't come back down. However, material prices in the next 4 years may come down considerably. There's a shortage of cement right now. We've got the highway going on. Everybody's competing for the same resources. If we wait 3-4 years, and I know our infrastructure is good there, at least that's my understanding, that we're good for 4 to 5 years. Price might come down. Might not, but it might come down. But we definitely don't know what the end result is going to be at this point for the cost. That's all.
Just for a point of clarity, should council decide to proceed with option 3B tonight, and the recommendation on the motion on the floor, that there is still a requirement per our procurement bylaw to report back to council and award any contract above $120,000. Therefore, if you do decide to proceed with this option, administration will proceed with the rescoping of the project. We will proceed with tendering, but the future award of that contract will be brought back to council and the implication of that cost as well.
So that's good. It's good to know that again. If the tenders come back, you know, crazy astronomical, we're here again, we're discussing again in public session. And I really want to say, I really appreciate all the work you did, Deputy Mayor, on talking to the businesses. I think that's really good. Director Auger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just further to Councillor Guerin's comments and through you to Councillor McGuire Blaze, just want to confirm on the proposed motion. Council approving proceeding with option 3B, direction to administration to cancel the current request for tender, the award to Stantec with the addition of direction to admin to come back with a report on completion of the project.
Fine. Any further comments to the motion? Okay, all in favor of that motion? Oh, sure. Mr. OJ, request for a recorded vote has come in.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's been a recorded vote on the motion as moved by Councillor McGuire Blaze and seconded by Councillor Guerin, that the report be received, that council approve proceeding with option 3B as described within said council report, that council direct administration to cancel RFT ID 22020 for the Town of Essex Downtown Essex Center streetscape. That council award Stantec Consulting Limited additional funds to rescope the Essex Streetscape project in accordance with option 3B in the amount of $65,940.48. And lastly, that council provide direction to administration to return with a report for council on completion of this project. Recorded vote was requested by the deputy mayor. Deputy Mayor, how do you vote? No. Deputy Mayor Shepley opposed. Councillor Verbeek, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Verbeek is in support. Councillor McGuire Blaze, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor McGuire Blaze is in support. Councillor Mady, how do you vote?
Opposed.
Councillor Mady is opposed. Councillor Allard, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Allard is in support. Councillor Guerin, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Guerin is in support. Councillor Hammond, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Hammond is in support. And Mayor Bondi, how do you vote?
Support.
With a recorded vote of 6 in support and 2 opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, so that's that. Great discussion, council. Moving on to reports from administration, economic development 2022-20 building report and development overview, November 2022. Looking for a mover of that report. Deputy Mayor Shepley. Looking for a seconder. Councillor McGuire Blaze, any questions to this report? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Economic Development Report 2022-21, Agritourism Toolbox. Recommended actions: that Economic Development Report be received and that council approve the additional funding of $9,817 for capital project ED 2022-0002 to be funded from the contingency reserve. Looking for a mover. Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor McGuire Blaze, and we will invite our Economic Development Officer or Manager, Nelson Severo, to speak. Welcome, Nelson.
Through your worship, very excited about this project in particular. Agritourism has been a point of discussion with the previous council in the strategic plan, and we've taken the initiative to move forward and implement the action items set out in our agritourism development strategy. One of those items included an agritourism toolkit in order to support our stakeholders, our farmers, our producers, and helping them understand what agritourism is and how they can develop an agritourism operation in their establishment. In the past, we've completed agritourism workshops around rules and regulations. We've completed an agritourism workshop on enhancing your online presence for our farmers and producers. The next step was creating an agritourism toolkit in order for them to have the tools in their toolbox to enhance their agritourism opportunities. So I'll have this toolkit was developed in partnership with the Culinary Tourism Alliance, who did our agritourism development strategy. was designed internally by our manager of strategic communications, Mark Tortola, who did a beautiful job on this. We have this on our website, and we've actually printed and shipped out 50 copies to agritourism stakeholders within the town of Essex. So those are your farmers and producers, your wineries, your roadside stands that already operate or showed interest in expanding into agritourism. So we're really happy about that in order to, touch base with people that may not be technologically advanced or have access to a computer. They have access to this document in print. So Shelley, I will go to page 4. Okay. So I'll just provide a quick rundown. I know if you've had a chance to read it, that's great. And if you don't, I'll just give you a quick overview. So just so we have I'll keep the conversation going, just to give you a bit of a background on agritourism. What is agritourism? We talk about tourism as a whole is trying to attract visitors to our municipality. Agritourism specifically is probably the strongest sector of tourism within the town of Essex. That could be a roadside stand, a winery, an on-farm stay, a cidery, a brewery on a farm, anything like that. We have many of those within the town of Essex that visitors from outside the area come and visit annually. It is the strongest sector, like I mentioned, of tourism within the municipality. So who is the toolkit for? It's for existing business owners, for prospective business owners, farmers and operators that are looking to expand into an agritourism operation or use on-farm diversified uses to their benefit instead of traditional cash crops, taking corn or soybeans off their property. Can they do something else to add value to their property? Could they implement a corn maze every fall? Could they do something creative in order to generate more or equal revenue on their agricultural property? And in the town of Essex, we permit that type of thing. So if we can go to page 11. So I touched on a couple of these already, but what are on-farm diversified uses? They could be a bed and breakfast, a small scale winery, a butcher shop, a antique store. There are a variety that we already see in the town of Essex. This document is really to give farmers and producers an idea of, what's permitted in the town of Essex and what can they do and how do they grow their business to be involved in agritourism. We'll go to page 13, 14. So traditional tourism is going to a place, experiencing it, whereas agritourism is multisensory to a degree. You're going to a winery, you're tasting the wine, you're enjoying the food, you're in the element. That is the type of experience that we are trying to enhance throughout the town of Essex. And by the creation of this document, we're not only supporting our farmers and producers, but we're giving them ideas in terms of how they can get there. How can they offer these opportunities to visitors? And how can we develop a destination within Southern Ontario that is known for agritourism and for wineries and farm stays and what have you. Page 17. This section, we go into storytelling. How can a farm producer tell their story? Really detailed into worksheets that we provided in the agritourism toolkit as well. And we can touch on those at the end of the document. Page 23. So here we've touched on some local inspirations, some what I'd call case studies on best examples of agritourism. So Paglioni Estate Winery is an amazing example of an agritourism operation that is growing something on their farm and adding value to that product by creating a winery and having a restaurant and providing opportunity for visitors and really contributing to the local rural economy. And the other example here is John R. Park Homestead. We wanted to create an example about accessibility, and they are a prime example of a business that is showcasing accessibility standards and how to be accessible to every single visitor, not just your average visitor, but every single visitor that wants to visit the wineries or visit an agritourism operation in the town of Essex. So if you go to page 30, so as valuable as this document is, we wanted to make it interactive with the farmer producer, with the prospective business owner, somebody that's looking to create an agritourism operation. So we have these worksheets. You can keep scrolling through them, that they can kind of jot down their information. They can jot down their ideas. They can look at partnering with different businesses. There's questions in here like a checklist on what to bring to the planning department. You know, they have a farm, they want to build something on their farm, like a farm market or a shop on their farm that would sell local produce, or a cidery. What do they need to do in order to comply with town of Essex bylaws and official plans and what have you? So this document is available online. It's available in print as well. If you know any farmers or producers that would benefit from this document, we could definitely get them a copy. The other thing that I wanted to touch on was the next steps of this program. So we've been working closely with Culinary Tourism Alliance over the last 2 years on agritourism initiatives within the town of Essex. And the next step is January 31st. We're going to have another agritourism workshop where we invite all of our farmers, producers, stakeholders to attend. We have an amazing guest speaker, and CT is going to touch on a couple points. And one of the points being the other part of this program that we're going into, which is our agritourism ambassador program, the front-facing program for our farmers and producers to connect more, to network more, to really learn from each other, and try to entice their neighbors and entice the agritourism community or agricultural community to get involved in agritourism. It's one thing me sitting here and telling you that agritourism is great, but it's another thing hearing it directly from a farmer producer who sees the value in this, not just from a rural economic development perspective, but from a revenue generator as a business. So the last point is on the recommendation. We have received grant funding. There's a shortfall of grant funding, so we need to asking council for additional $9,000 to support the next steps in this project. Thank you. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Silvera. It's great. It's I want to go to some of those places right now. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Director Nelson, or Sildar, sorry. Just a quick question. This 9,000, is it that we ran over or we didn't receive as much money as we were looking for?
We didn't receive as much money as we had anticipated. So it's coming from ACDEV reserves. I don't know if you want to.
Questions? We do have a motion on the table to receive the presentation. Councilor McGuire, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Is this money already spent, or are you looking to do something else with it?
So the next phase in this program is the agritourism, like I had mentioned, and the agritourism ambassador program. So this funding would be to support those initiatives. I do plan on coming back to council in 2023 in budget deliberations to continue to support this agritourism initiative that I see value in, and I hope you do see value in it as well. I know that our farmers and producers also see tremendous value in this. So, yeah.
Adwick, and then I believe Deputy Mayor Shepley has something.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. Just to add to the comments and questions pertaining to the budget, the strategy that council has adopted, it was 2021, I believe the strategy was adopted, identified multiple action items. The ambassador program as well as the workshop were items that were identified in the action plan or the strategy, and were also identified during the 2022 capital budget year. We just happened to be over budget when we completed the work in terms of this particular toolkit and are now moving towards those last two items. I shouldn't say last two, but the next two items in the strategy.
Or I did, but I didn't take the opportunity. You did a great job on it. It looks fantastic, but
Okay. If there are no further questions, looking to see all those in favor. That is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Silvera, for the great work again. 10.3 Infrastructure Services 2022-02 Property Servicing Policy. Looking for a mover in that Infrastructure Services Report 2022 be received and that council adopt Infrastructure Services Policy number 52 entitled Property Servicing Policy, and that council authorize and direct administration to begin utilizing the Property Servicing Policy and amend Schedule A of the bylaw to include the charges and deposits identified within this report. Looking for a mover of this report, please. Deputy Mayor Shepley, seconded by Councillor Hammond, and we will go to Manager. I moved you up too quick there. Whoa. Manager Rob Mackey, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bondi. So just quickly, the purpose of this report and policy is to create a formal process for property owners to perform property servicing works within the town of Essex. Our current practice was established in 2004 and has not been amended or changed since. Our current flat rate fees do not cover today's construction costs. The intention of this policy is to discontinue the current servicing practice and create a streamlined approach for private property owners to perform site servicing works. This will be achieved through the licensing of contractors through an application process set out in this policy. Private property owners will be able to contact these authorized contractors directly to obtain pricing and enter a private agreement. It will be the sole responsibility of the property owner to select a contractor of their choosing. Please note this policy does not apply to servicing of properties or lots that are part of a plan of subdivision or site plan control process. And if there are any questions on the policy report, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions from council. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
for a little while. Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just a quick question. When I read this, my understanding is currently right now, the town selects three contractors that they've pre-approved. Do they have are they putting that same $5,000 hold in advance, or is that something new that we've created?
That's through you, Mayor Bondi. That's something new that we created. Right now, we don't really have an actual approved contractor list. We just have local contractors that we utilize that we end up sourcing.
I guess my question where I have an issue with this particular part of the bylaw is we're requiring that they, if I understood it correctly, if I'm wrong, please correct me, that they are putting $5,000 in hold to be able to stay on that list. It almost feels to me like it's a pay to play out situation where if they can't afford to do it, then they're not on the list. And if they don't leave the 5,000 in, they're removed from the list.
So the 5,000 deposit is is like an indemnity deposit. So it's pretty much to make sure that all the works are completed and all restoration works are completed within the right of way, so that there's any sort of deficiencies that we have that value there to actually go back and fix those deficiencies. We have something to rely on to actually go back and fix those deficiencies.
Last question. So that once they put the 5,000 in, if they want to stay on the approved list and they meet all the other qualifications, they have to leave that in order to stay on that approved list for the lifespan
Yes.
of their working for the town. Okay, thank you.
From council? Seeing none, all in favor? We're voting on the motion. I will ask again because I didn't see any hands on this side. Or all in favor? Okay, opposed? All right, that is, do you want that to be noted? Okay, that carried. Okay, capital 10.4 capital works and asset management, 22-13, results of requests for tender supply of various pickup trucks. Recommended action that Capital Works and Infrastructure report be received and that council award the request for tender for the supply of water department pickup truck to Kennap Ford in the amount of $67,000. And that council reward the request for tender for the supply of the Community Services Department pickup truck to Blue Mountain Chrysler in the amount of $72,000. And that council approve the additional funding of $22,000 above the approved 2022 capital budget of $50,000 for the water department pickup truck. And that council approve the additional funding of $23,000 above the approved 2022 capital budget of $58,000 for the Community Services Department pickup truck, of which $5,000 will come from General Parks and Recreation Reserve and $18,000 come from the town's Asset Management Reserve. Looking for a mover. I don't think I've ever read so much out loud in my whole life. Councilor McGuire Blaze, supported by Councilor Guerin. Discussion from members of council. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Again, in a year's time, vehicles didn't jump up this much money. I don't understand how we're putting out our request for tenders that we're getting these met. Like that's a huge increase on those two. I know the one switched up to a four cab, but it's just a lot of money that we're adding in after the fact. And I don't understand how this keeps happening. It seems to be a trend, and maybe I'm new to politics, and I'm concerned that I keep seeing it happen.
We'll go to our director, Director Drusevich.
Through the chair. I think it's important to keep in mind that when budget deliberations begin, internally staff is formulating numbers sometimes in September of the year prior. So ultimately, you're seeing costs that were computed anywhere between May to September of 2020, even 21. And if those projects got deferred because of COVID, you're looking at potentially stale dated budget figures at this point. So we are hopeful that this is the end of large anomalies such as this. And in the future, we hope that this is not going to be the regular occurrence.
Yeah, maybe it was in there. I did a lot of reading over the last couple of days. What were we getting for our trade-in on those vehicles? Are we allowed to know that?
Through the chair, the tenders that were accepted did not include trade-in values. So the recommendation within these reports would be any surplus that we realize goes back into the funding source. So they would be deposited back into the asset management plan unless the town has other use for them in other divisions. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll go to Councilor Verbeek and then we'll pop to a director.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So everyone in this room is aware of our last council meeting, how many times we had a big over budget item to just, okay. And we just kept moving through them, and then we're doing them again tonight. And I mean, I sit here, someone that drives a 2009 rust bucket until the wheels roll off because I don't want to take on any more debt for my family. So I'm just wondering, why can't we shop around here and not go this far over budget? Or can we get some more life out of the trucks we have? Just, another year or two. Just wondering.
Director Borissoud over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi, through you to the rest of council. So the first point I just want to touch on is I believe that the only vehicle that did come back with a replacement cost was the one for community services, which in the tender, it was, I want to say $3,500 for the vehicle that was traded in, the trade-in value. So, and the other point is all the tenders do go through a public procurement process. So it's open bidding to everybody. One thing to keep in mind is we did have a motor vehicle accident last August, and it took until almost May of this year to get a replacement. And that replacement only came in that timeline because we were able to find a suitable used vehicle. And in the meantime, for the second vehicle that we were looking for, we have been actively searching for a used vehicle that would meet our needs. And it was not possible to find that. So the used vehicle that we found came within hundreds of dollars of the budget of 58,500, and that was a used vehicle. So the new vehicles are coming in at these prices that are being shown in the tender. So we have done our due diligence to try and see some suitable options to make the budget to work. Unfortunately, with the timelines, if we have a vehicle breakdown, it could hinder staff from being able to do their job in these periods. It could be very timely. So it's a risk to the municipality if we were to do that.
Mayor Blaze, and then Councillor Garen.
Thank you through the chair. We're generally a new council here. Is there a asset plan that we could see what is the matter with these vehicles? I mean, I'm with Councillor Verbeek in saying that, can we get another year or two? I mean, I've seen the vehicles and everyone has seen the town vehicles driving around. They don't look like they're in that rough a shape. I mean, for this amount of money, it just makes sense if we hold off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not necessarily a rebuttal, but do want to provide some important information. So a few weeks ago, we do monitor our assets as they're going vehicles. Very important for this vehicle specifically because the computer board is failing in the actual vehicle. We've looked at replacement of that motherboard and it's very expensive. It's gone to the extent that the brakes have failed and the vehicle is now off the road because it's a danger for staff to be driving that vehicle. So this is an example in this specific situation of why it's important for replacement. We don't want to get to a situation where we are in this predicament where it's usually based on about a 10-year life cycle. That's when we're looking at replacing our vehicles for these purposes. And I believe Director Gerard has a comment.
Elaborate too on what Jake is saying. We do assess every vehicle from a maintenance and depreciation standpoint as well. So there'll be some more information on that as budget rolls around and some more training rolls around. Our asset management plan is located on our website under reports and publications. So if you just want to take a look at that, it's currently published there on our website. But essentially there's just to explain it in a nutshell. So vehicles depreciate with age. Everybody knows that when you drive a new vehicle off the lot, it depreciates immediately, but it also depreciates as it ages as well. Then there's also a point that we monitor on how much we're spending on maintenance of these vehicles, and not just the regular maintenance like brakes and tires and things like that, but when things start to break and occur, and we evaluate at which point those two things it's best to replace that vehicle. Ultimately, I know the comment was necessarily that they don't look like they're in bad shape. That's not necessarily, that's correct. They're not in bad shape, but for the town's use and for the town's purposes, and what's the most responsible thing to do for our residents and value for dollar on trade-in values and surplusing vehicles and things like that, it is the most optimal time to replace the vehicle.
Gerard, Councillor Garen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, good questions to ask, whether you're a new counselor or you've been on council for a term or more. And there's nothing wrong with asking the questions. First year in council, myself, second year in council, I asked a lot of those questions. And we have had times where we've heard from administration, they've said, we're stretching it another year. We're going to try to get another year out of a piece of equipment. So I think we have to have a little bit of faith in our administration that they are doing that. I mean, you've seen the budget they put forward. You've seen what 3B looks like for the streetscape. They are definitely, I think, taking all that in consideration, but all the same, good to ask. The other problem we have is you're going to order the vehicle, and we're lucky if we get it in 2023. It seems like there's just no inventory. I've got two I'm waiting for right now, and with A plans, and then I don't know how long I'm going to have to wait and get no reply from them. So yeah, I mean, we don't want to be without the vehicle. So, but all good questions.
Verbeek.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. Just a general comment on this. All of council in your comments tonight, you are correct. Our directors, and we've had this conversation where it's not our intent to keep coming back for council for money. That will be stopping. They're aware of that. This is a project obviously approved in 2022 due to some staffing transitions. That's why it's coming back later. We work with the Director of Corporate Services to find the funding, but we've had conversations internally. We don't know what the market is, but a municipality, some contractors may feel it's a municipality, they're always going to find them funding. We've already talked. We realize we may not do some projects moving forward. So great conversation tonight, but I want council as a whole to realize we see the issue too, and we'll be addressing that moving forward, especially during 2023.
Councilor Verbeek.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, CAO Suite, for sure. I'm really glad that you got the opportunity to share that publicly with us. And yeah, these were questions that just needed to be discussed out loud for the public, for sure. But I'm wondering if early on in the last term, we got that wonderful slideshow with all kinds of our vehicles and showing us that, you know what, we're gonna push out another 2 years on this, but just so you know, in the future, we are going to be looking to replace this. And you know, do you remember that slideshow when we first came on with discussing all the budget, right? But it was really it was really helpful in addressing all the various vehicles and machines.
Thank you, Councilor Verbeek. I think our administration will take these comments to heart. And I know we've gone through it before with the fire truck. That was, you know, to see, just so we know too, like what are our priorities and for vehicles down the line. Any further comments on this? We do have a motion on the table. Oh, Councilor Allard.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I'm just wondering, I thought I read somewhere that there's the purchase of the 2 pickups and then there was specialty, I know they put the lettering on and stuff like that. Is there other specialty tooling that needs to be put on these pickups?
One of the directors. Thank you.
Mayor Bondi, the prices that were indicated on there are all inclusive of the decals and the extra features that have to go on them.
Thank you. Is that okay, Councilor Allard? Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comments, we have a motion on the floor. So all in favor of the motion? I will. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. Finance and Business Services 2022-09 revised schedules to bylaws 1812, 2040, 1850, and 2209 recommended actions that Finance and Business Services report be received and that the following three scheduled be revised effective January 1st, 2023. Schedule C, Schedule A, and Schedule B. That bylaw 2022 being a bylaw to establish water and sanitary sewer rates and charges be read a first, second, and third time today. Looking for a mover on this. Councillor McGuire-Blaise, seconded by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions to these motions? The motion. Councillor Hammond.
There, just one thing I was noticing is that wards 3 and 4 seem to historically get higher increases than wards 1 and 2. And I was just wondering if there was a specific reason for that.
Okay, thank you for the question, Councillor Hammond. Director Drusevich.
Thank you. Through the chair. I'm just going to give a brief summary of each of the updates, and I think it'll answer the question. So to go back and to explain to council, user fees are unlike taxes in that they are attributed to a user for a specific service that only they benefit from. So to give you an example, somebody puts a new garage in, they pay for a permit. Not all of the tax base benefits from that garage. Why it is a user fee. Same with water and sanitary sewer, right? It is a user use consumption fee. So you'll notice that each of the schedules and bylaws here are going through for a first, second, and third final reading tonight. It is because they are all based on previous studies that have been done and conducted and previously adopted by town council. So the first schedule being Schedule A and 8.1, in 2020, an external consultant performed a time analysis of how long it takes staff to perform each different function in regards to each fee on that schedule. They come up with the fee, and within that bylaw is a recommended increase that happens annually. So that bylaw already has the increase that we are mandated to follow. The increase for Schedule A and 8.1 is always tied to Q3 of the Consumer Price Index, this year being an increase of 6.9%. So that's what users will see on that particular schedule. Also to highlight the development charge schedule. This, very similar to Schedule A and 8.1, is based on our development charge background, and the inflationary increase is built directly into that bylaw that has already been previously adopted by council. That is tied to the third quarter non-commercial construction index. This year, that was 15.6%. So there will be an increase to development charges of 15.6%. The water and sanitary rates are done on a ward basis, and they're based on a financial study that, again, has been adopted by previous council. That financial study takes a look at the amount of users in the system. It takes a look at the assets, and it's what is required to fund those assets. And that is how that is calculated. So you will notice that there are nominal increases throughout those different schedules in the range of 1.3 to 2% for the water charges, and in the range of 2 to 2.5% for sanitary sewer. And again, it's tied to the replacement value of those assets and upcoming projects that users may see within those different wards. I'd be happy to take any questions at this point.
Your questions?
It does, but still, why can't it be the same across all wards?
Through the chair. So there's different infrastructure in each ward, right? So the replacement to replace the plant in Ward 1 is going to be drastically different than to replace it in Ward 3. So it's basically a financial function of how many users are benefiting from the system and what is the cost of that system. So there will be, because we have a ward system, there will be differing rates.
Yep.
Okay, I understand that, but say something drastic happens out in Ward 4 and it costs a whole bunch of money to replace it so they can get their services back. Does that mean that the next budget, their increase is going to be significantly more higher than the rest of the wards?
Through the chair, not necessarily. So we do have sanitary sewer reserves, and we do have contingency amounts built into it. If it was something catastrophic or drastic, we would have to look at funding plans at that point. Or if it was related to growth, there would be a funding formula to fund that growth.
Council? Deputy Mayor Shepley?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, or Mayor Bondi. I want the gavel back. The water and sewer charges, those are gonna go up again. I mean, geez, I just think we're just hammering everybody. Just feel like is there any way we could not do that? It feels to me like there's this, like we've got budget yet to go through. It seems like there's increase everywhere. And I know that's what's going on. I'm just wondering if there's anywhere where we could trim it a little bit if possible.
So we would be deviating from a financial plan that was prepared by external consultants. So they recommend minimal increases over a long-term basis to avoid rate shock. So by not implementing a 1% over the next 10 years, what you would likely see is in year 10, you require infrastructural renewal, and you would have to hit the ratepayers at that point with a 10% increase. So this financial plan is adopted, trying to keep rate stability in mind.
Rusevich, from being here over 12 years now, I've seen the town of Essex go and do water, wastewater studies all the time. Because in 2018, I got asked 4 times on the doorstep. It was the most asked question. Why are the town of Essex water and sewage rates so high? And so I would say to that is it is cost recovery. and other municipalities would use tax money and subsidize their water and wastewater rates, where at least us, we keep our water, wastewater rates whole. So once you start wrapping it around, water pays for water. For example, if you live somewhere where you don't have town water, is it fair to have that person's taxes pay for water of somebody else? Not really, right? So that's how we have, like, it's broken down into ward systems. So it does make sense once you wrap your head around it. It takes a while sometimes. Questions from administration? Council? Who? Oh, Director Gerard.
Through the mayor, I also just want to point out that water and sewer is very heavily regulated. The cost of service is something that we're legislatively required to complete. I know that there's no shortage of reading as a council member, but if you are interested in looking at the rate study, it is included in our reports and publications section of our website. There's a slew of reading that you can go through on there, but if you ever have any questions about any of the reports that are included on that, we're very happy to answer any.
Director Gerard, any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? I don't think I saw any opposed. That was carried. Community Services 2022-33, Colchester Guardian request to waive Colchester Harbor berthing fees. Recommended action that Community Services Report 2022-33 be received and that council approve waiving of the Colchester Harbor berthing fees for the Colchester Guardian vessel for 4 years from 2023 to 2026 at a cost of approximately $1,500 a year, be funded from the Community Partnerships Grant. Looking for a mover here in a sector, Councilor Verbeek and Councilor Hammond. Discussions? Deputy Mayor Shepley.
I do. I fully support this. Hope everybody else can too. They do a fantastic service to our community.
Comments? Oh, and Director Morrison, please.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. I just want to point out that the previous few councils have also done this. It's been a yearly waiver through the Community Partnership Grant for the service they provide as a safety resource for the community, and they work in conjunction with the Canadian Coast Guard.
Director Councilor Allard.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I'm totally in support of this. The Coast Guard Guardian does great for us. Every time you hear that helicopter go by, your heart sinks. So these guys do great work. They've had many medals and awards over the years. In 2014, 4 members received Coast Guard Auxiliary Operation Merit Medals for saving 9 people. We don't ever want to see 9 people need to be saved.
Councilor Allard, any more comments or questions? If not, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. 10.7 Parks and Facilities 2022-28, request for additional funds for basketball nets at the Madel Community Center. Looking for a mover that Parks and Facilities report be received and that council approve additional funding of $19,971 above the approved 2022 capital budget of $15,500 for basketball net wench at the Madel Center. Looking for a mover? Councilor Guerin, Deputy Mayor Shepley, and I will open the floor to Director Morrison.
So I just want to point out, I know that this looks like a little bit of a high cost, but I do want to point out where this cost was coming from. So the initial budget that was put in the 2022 budgets and approved by council was for winch replacement, which was for, there's 2 overhanging nets that come down and they need a winch to put them back up. So essentially what happened was that was a Band-Aid fix. It wasn't recommended to have that winch system just with a new pulley and a winch. Through some additional projects, we received the Ontario Trillium Grant. So we had a project window replacement, which came significantly under budget, which was also part of that grant. So it's essentially a reallocation of fees from the grant that we're reapplying from the windows over to the basketball nets. So instead of just having the replacement pulleys, we're actually replacing the basketball nets entirely. So the only cost that would be seen from the town of Essex is $544, with the remainder coming from the grant itself. So for the value and the low cost that we would incur, that's why administration pushed us forward for $544 to replace the nets entirely.
For McGuire Blaze.
Thank you through the chair. What happens with the old nets? Are they going to be repurposed?
Through your Mayor Bondi. So at this point, the old nets would be taken down and brought to, or basically the property of the contractor that's doing the work. They're in charge of removing it. The nets right now, the reason why the winch was necessary was because the pulley system and the winch are broken. So we can't even bring the nets back up, which is causing significant amount of complaints by the pickleball community. So that is part of the reason why it's important for us to do this. So to us, we would not be looking after that net system because it would be pulled down by the contractor and then they take care of it.
All right, thank you, Chair. I don't mean the system, I mean the actual nets. Like, will we be able to repurpose those nets? I mean, the backboard and the actual net. Will we be able to repurpose those nets with this project or put them in a park somewhere?
Yeah, there's no intent of repurposing them. They would be going to the contractor as part of the contract that they would be removing them and taking them off site, and they would replace with new basketball nets in the facility as part of the winch system.
Any further questions to administration? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Legal and Legislative Services 2022-40 residential video surveillance cameras. Recommended action will be seeking a mover that Legal and Legislative Services Report 2022-40 being received, and that bylaw 2210 being a bylaw to prohibit and regulate fortification and protective elements of land be read a first, second, and third time and provisionally adopted December 19th. Looking for a mover and a seconder on this. Councillor Hammond and Councillor McGuire Blaze, and we will go to Director Auger for a comment and perhaps a little walkthrough.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to the rest of council. So purpose of the report again is to recommend that council repeal and replace the existing fortification bylaw for the purposes of enhancing the ability to regulate video surveillance camera usage. The bylaw itself is really just before council for its first consideration this evening and or discussion. Assuming the bylaw receives provisional passage tonight, 2 readings, it would come back for a 3rd reading, either in its current form or as revised as may be appropriate. This came out of a council meeting from 2 years ago now. At the regular council meeting back on December 7th, 2020, there was a delegation received expressing concerns with personal security cameras being directed from neighboring yards onto private property. Council passed a resolution at that meeting asking administration to come back with a report on the development of a potential bylaw to protect the rights of residents with respect to surveillance cameras installed on private property. So currently, video surveillance is already addressed somewhat in the town's current fortification bylaw 456, which is an old bylaw of sorts going back to 2003. In that bylaw, it states that no person shall apply excessive protective elements to land so as to restrict, obstruct, or impede law enforcement or emergency services from accessing or exiting any land. The definition in the bylaw of excessive protective elements covers a wide range of devices and matters that could be used to try to impede that access for law enforcement purposes. But in there, it also includes visual surveillance equipment, including video cameras or electronic surveillance devices, which permit or are permitting either stationary or scanned viewing or listening beyond the perimeter of the land, so away from the land in which those devices have been installed. So So under that current bylaw, the old bylaw that we'll call it, or existing bylaw, we'll call it for now. Complaints about video surveillance can only be accepted by law enforcement if the cameras are being used with that intent again to restrict lawful access, again, by law enforcement, or sorry, by law enforcement or emergency services. If the town receives a complaint indicating their issue is with that neighboring property, that neighboring property owner directing cameras onto their private property, then technically the complaint is outside the current parameters of the town's bylaw from 2003. And in that case, the resident's likely to be informed that it's either a civil matter or possibly a criminal matter. And if possibly a criminal matter, they would be redirected to the Ontario Provincial Police. So as a result, this report recommends amendments to the current bylaw because again, bylaw enforcement can only enforce if they can demonstrate, that video surveillance or those video cameras are again being used to restrict law enforcement or emergency services. And as a result, it makes it difficult, if not impossible with the current state of the bylaw, to actually investigate or lay a charge in regards to any other situation. So to assist with enforcement on an ongoing basis, administration's recommending amending that definition of excessive protective elements by removing the requirement to establish intent, intent being to try to prevent law enforcement in emergency personnel in the exercise of their duties. That would be removed, and the threshold also would be lowered to provide that this would apply to simply any devices that permit or are permitting viewing or listening, again, beyond the perimeter of the land. So this change would then allow enforcement the ability to take complaints about those cameras on private properties, or that may capture activity on that adjacent private property. The revised bylaw would not affect any stationary device or camera on the front wall of a property, or any cameras that are recording activity solely within that land or within the public right of way. So that would exempt your typical doorbell cameras that many of us have today. In addition to that, through this amended bylaw, administration's recommending a few other additional amendments. The introduction of a minimum set fine of $500 through the Provincial Offences Act for contraventions. Given bylaw enforcement some further enforcement powers. Permitting the chief building official the ability to grant exemptions for the bylaw in certain scenarios. And certainly, and then one of the recommendations is this amended bylaw that we have. The recommendations, it's simply easier for better readability, transparency to just simply repeal the old bylaw and introduce the new bylaw that council has before it. Enforcement implications. Certainly, we make these proposed amendments knowing that like other bylaws, there may simply be challenges at times from a bylaw enforcement perspective. Each matter is going to be on a case-by-case basis, and so certainly there's going to be times where enforcement's going to be a challenge. But if the complaints received under this new bylaw, bylaw enforcement will have the ability to investigate these complaints. But there could be challenges. For example, town's bylaw enforcement officers cannot lawfully impose or enter the property if they don't have consent. They may need to obtain a search warrant for those purposes, and certainly, again, determined on a case-by-case basis, the reasonable grounds that a justice of the peace may or may not accept as reasonable grounds to be able to issue that search warrant may vary from one case to the other. So there may not be the ability to force based on that. And even if access to the video feed is provided voluntarily or obtained through a search order. You could have an ongoing situation where there's violations or the violations revert back after inspection. So you obtain that access, and the next day you have the situation potentially of continuing and ongoing offenses. So that could be a challenge as far as being able to enforce. However, if that satisfactory evidence can be collected, then by law enforcement would now have the ability to proceed with a charge, including a more serious charge under Part 3 under Provincial Offenses Act. And then a couple final notes. The one item being certainly in instances where by law enforcement believes on reasonable grounds that they're clearly, that the potential violation clearly seems to be criminal related, then the recommendation would be for the immediate referral to the authorities, to the OPP. And then overall, the second point overall, the new bylaw at least opens up and provides that ability to receive and investigate those complaints, which is what council asked for originally when that delegation came to council. But certainly, again, we're going to acknowledge that like other bylaws, there may simply be challenges from time to time with enforcement. Sorry. And I think that's it. Council has any questions, I'll try to question that. But again, simply before council for 2 readings and open to any discussion that council may have.
Thank you, Director OJ. We have Deputy Mayor Shepley, then Councillor Hammond, then Councillor McGuire, please.
My concern with this is I have 7 cameras at my place. We oversee part of the church property. We stopped, we aided in the criminals that broke in there and did some damage. It was a useful tool. It's not used for any bad reasons. But we do, through my property alone, we do span into the neighbor's property at times in order to have full coverage of our property. We've had car accidents on the street where we've caught the car accident. It's an incredible tool, and I think it's impossible to police through a bylaw officer because as Director OJ said, I can change the camera angle 2 minutes after they leave. I can zoom in. It's incredible what we can do with these things. It's unfortunate, but I believe it's a civil matter. It's where it should stay, or a police matter. It shouldn't be something we burden our bylaw officers with. So for that, I won't be supporting it.
Through you, Mayor, to you, Mr. OJ, I have an experience like during COVID where a neighbor's camera was trained on a business and reporting to police whenever somebody was going into that business during COVID, during lockdown. And actually, that business, trying to stay alive, was visited and did receive a fine. And of course, they're not in business anymore. But my question is, if the police are being, privy to this, if somebody's making a complaint and showing their camera on somebody else's building, do they have any wherewithal to report it to a bylaw officer? Should this be a bylaw, or would they act on it themselves?
Madam Mayor, and to Councillor Hammond, the intent of this bylaw, I believe, is to try to capture those intrusions onto private properties. We talked about a civil matter. One of the civil matters could be the tort of invasion of privacy. The privacy expectations of a business obviously don't rank as high as that of a private property, and that invasion of privacy with respect to, or the expectation of privacy is obviously much higher on those private properties. So yeah, I think that's something that would need to be examined, but I don't think it's as applicable to the scenario that you laid out when we're talking about a business that's presumably open for public.
Counselor McGuire Blaze.
Thank you through the chair. I think what this is trying to do is allow, so for example, I have a neighbor who has a camera pointed directly at my pool. They have a son who watches it all day and all night. So there is no privacy in my backyard. And there's not much that we can do other than to call the OPP, but there's really not much at this time that they can do. But I think if I understand correctly, what this will do is allow the OPP to do something about the camera that's pointed in my backyard.
To Counselor McGuire Blaze. So that scenario in which there's a camera from property A pointed at property B and over a pool area. I guess there might be two options. There might be the option of reporting that to the OPP, but given the wording of this current proposed bylaw, our bylaw enforcement would have the opportunity to have that conversation and request that that camera be pointed, because it's currently pointed in violation. It's away from the land in question. It's not in the public right of way. So that would at least give them the opportunity to investigate that complaint that comes forward.
Thank you. I misunderstood. I thought this was giving the OPP more access to private neighborhoods and not, you both were describing business neighborhoods and I was trying to bring it back to private, which is what this is about. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yeah, so I'm glad this finally came back. It's been a while. I thought it maybe just fell off a little bit, but it was important at the time when I brought the motion forward because the security cameras on private properties, if used in the way they're supposed to be used, they're definitely meaningful and they help. It's what I wanted to get from a bylaw was we have a bylaw in place. We just want to, improve on that bylaw. We wanted to make sure we were being respectful for people's privacy, and we wanted to make sure that we had a bylaw that was defendable. So this is a lot closer. We know there's always going to be situations, but you're using that camera in the right context, and there's no issues with security cameras. But there's a difference between, protecting your house and going outside of that, and maybe inappropriately aiming at someone else's privacy. That's kind of where we were getting at with it. But thanks for bringing it back.
Questions to our administration, Counselor Allard? Counselor Allard?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I just figured that this surveillance, you're going to have a tough time policing this and making anything stick. But I guess if having the bylaw out there may deter some people, that it's better than nothing.
Counselor Allard, Counselor Verbeek?
Madam Mayor, yes, I want to thank Director Auger and his team for, addressing this issue. We've had numerous members of the public have concerns and request that we try to make some changes and stiffen this up. And as Counselor Allard said, if by doing this, it might deter people a little bit. So thanks for the work on this. I'll be supporting it.
Any further questions to the proposed bylaw that we are passing on the first and second reading? We can always discuss it again in the new year once you've thought over it. Okay, seeing none, all in favor? And opposed? Do you want that noted? No, okay. 10.9, Legal and Legislative Services, 2022-41, Greenhouse Light Abatement Bylaw. Recommended actions at Legal and Legislative Services be received, and that this bylaw be read a first and a second time. And again, I would like to go to Director Auger to give the Coles notes of this.
Madam Mayor. So again, council has before it a report together with a bylaw that's proposed just for provisional through reading passage this evening. And again, this relates to a resolution passed by the previous council midterm. Council originally, and an update was provided to council back in March of this year. So this report and this proposed bylaw was in progress earlier this year as well. But the original resolution was for administration to review and bring a report back to council on the implementation of a bylaw prohibiting and regulating lights and odors. So, and this relates certainly to industry trends pointing to, a continued increase of greenhouse development in the future as the climate becomes increasingly variable and hostile for field crop cultivation. And so the town of Essex to date has not experienced a mass influx just yet of greenhouse development, but it is an area that's expected to grow. And certainly there's development in neighboring municipalities. So when we reported to council back in March of this year, we proposed that the focus instead of this bylaw be on the light nuisance part of it. When speaking to the odor nuisance, administration pointed out that this area is currently regulated by federal cannabis regulations, and the town of Essex already regulates odors emitted from agricultural operations through various regulations under the town's general zoning bylaw. So administration recommended that that odor regulations not be included in the municipal bylaw, and that the focus should be upon the nuisance impacts from light activities. And council at that March 21st meeting did provide that support and asked council to return with a bylaw relating to the public nuisances related to the interior greenhouse light emissions. But specific to that resolution from March of 2022 was that the bylaw follow best practice recommendations from the greenhouse industry. So the proposed greenhouse light regulations that are in this bylaw tonight have two key components. The first is that an owner or occupant of a greenhouse that utilizes lights as part of its operations shall ensure barriers are installed in good practice so that the barriers, and commonly the barriers would be a curtain, a greenhouse curtain, that these barriers cover the entirety of the sidewalls and the end walls of the greenhouse from sunset to sunrise. The second regulation as part of that is that same owner or occupant of a greenhouse that utilizes lights, again, conditioned upon utilizing lights, shall ensure barriers are installed in good practice so that the barriers cover a minimum of 90% of the ceiling of the greenhouse from sunset to sunrise. So, and again, this proposal is, just to continue on one more, a couple points on the barriers. The barriers are to be permanently installed and maintained to prevent or block direct light emitting from the interior of the greenhouse and to block that from escaping to the exterior of the greenhouse onto adjoining lands or into the night sky. The barriers can either be permanently affixed or be part of a system which permits the barriers to extend or retract through mechanical or manual means. So in moving forward with those two proposed regulations, the first report in March again this year provided some information on some of the earlier consultation. And then since then, we've had more extensive consultation with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, otherwise known as AMAFRA. So AMAFRA was specifically provided with a copy of our proposed regulations for their review, and AMAFRA's feedback and comments have been favorable to the proposed regulations. And the correspondence is attached to this report, the correspondence from AMAFRA, but I just want to quote from one section of the letter. And this is coming from the Assistant Deputy Minister of AMAFRA. And I'm just quoting at the bottom of the first page. With respect to the emerging research on managing greenhouse light, it has been confirmed that ceiling curtains cause increased heat and humidity levels in the greenhouse. The effects of managing light must be controlled to prevent harm to crop production. When ceiling light abatement curtains are 100% closed, heat and humidity cannot escape the greenhouse. Therefore, consideration should be given to allow some opening for ventilation purposes. An approach used in other jurisdictions, and they give the example of the Netherlands, the approach in other jurisdictions allows 10% gapping of light abatement curtains at certain times. It is positive that your proposed bylaw also allows for gapping of ceiling light abatement curtains. The other part of that is MAFRA is doing ongoing consultations themselves on continued research on maybe amendments to best practices. They're working with a number of groups, the Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers, the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, University of Guelph. They're looking to address research gaps that may be present out there and to provide further evidence-based guidance. But right now, the best practices or our regulations are in line with best practices. So MAFRA, and I think this is also an attachment to the report, recently issued an information sheet called Managing Nighttime Greenhouse Light Emissions. And a few things to take away from that information sheet. Firstly, the research recognizes that light emitted from the sides and ceiling of the greenhouses using supplemental lighting at night may impact or provide a nuisance on neighboring land uses. However, these light emissions can be minimalized by using ceiling, side, and end wall light abatement curtains. The research also recognizes that when ceiling light abatement curtains are 100%, again, the heat and humidity cannot escape the greenhouse. Therefore, OMAFRA encourages consideration to be given to allow some opening for ventilation. This approach of 10% gapping of light abatement is used in other jurisdictions, and again, our proposed regulations do incorporate the 10% gapping. A couple of other points. First thing is that it's worth noting that currently, to our knowledge, no greenhouses in the town of Essex are currently in operation with lights. But when they do, or if they do proceed with incorporating lights as part of their operations for production and processing purposes, then they would need to conform at that time. But there's none that are currently already incorporating lights as part of their operations. And then secondly, any future greenhouse operations being proposed in the town of Essex would be subject to site plan control. And so, during that pre-consultation phase, the applicants would be advised of the regulations relating to greenhouse light abatement to ensure that they're followed and continue to be followed. As of right now, currently there are no provincial regulations that address greenhouse lighting. Locally, Leamington has adopted a bylaw initially requiring 100% light abatement. Initially, it required 100% abatement in greenhouse sidewalls, end walls, from 1 hour before sunset to 1 hour after sunrise, and then 100% ceiling abatement for the same time period, except for a brief window between 2 and 6, in which 90% light abatement. Since that time, Leamington has further revised that bylaw and has relaxed that 100% to a 90% requirement, which is in line with what we're proposing tonight. Kingsville also has adopted a bylaw that simply prevents greenhouse lighting shining on neighborhood properties, but does not mandate or direct specific abatement requirements directly in the wording of the bylaw. And then both Lakeshore and Chatham-Kent, and council was advised of this previously, I believe, they've each adopted an interim control bylaw to prohibit those developments pending further review of the effects of greenhouses. So again, this is before council for its consideration. Assuming the proposed bylaw ultimately receives a third reading, Administration would apply to the Ministry of the Attorney General for set fines. The maximum set fine that could be applied for under Part 1 of the Provincial Offences Act under this proposed bylaw would be $1,000. And certainly in addition to seeking fines as part of the enforcement, if required, the town can apply to court for an order to a court injunction to prohibit any continuing violations. So I'll leave it at that. Apologize for the long Cole's notes, and I'll leave it to council for any questions they may have.
OJ, I think that's called like a filibuster or something like that. No, it's good. It was really comprehensive. I'm really grateful that of all your work on that. I think it was wise to wait for the other municipalities to do it and then find out what didn't work for them. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor. I think time will tell. I think it's one of those things where there are regulations. There are penalties to go with that regulation. I think it's too early, and even from our perspective, there's a little bit of that wait and see how it develops. And certainly it's a bit of an evolving area because, like I said a few minutes ago, AMAFRA is still researching this project, and so as I guess maybe the science or technology evolves, there may be further amendments we may need to provide into that bylaw. Again, trying to line up as much as possible with what are those current existing best practices. So yeah, I don't really have any, I guess, data or early data on what the enforcement efforts have been like.
One of the things, first of all, I think it's a fantastic idea. I'll fully support it. But my understanding is this doesn't affect the medicinal cannabis growers that could pop up in our municipality where they wouldn't be under the same bylaw.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and to the Deputy Mayor. Again, I think the key triggering is the use of those lights in the operation. So, that might be applicable. But again, it's still early and we're not aware of any those operations using lights at this point. But, certainly the hope is that, some of those developments will look to the town of Essex.
Any further comments? Councillor Verbeek.
You, Madam Chair. Thanks for your work on this again, Director. So in my reading, am I to understand that Leamington they've adopted their bylaw and it's quite stringent to try and, protect the community around it with just that little 10% window between like 2 and 7 that they can open the light on the ceiling, because if they don't, it's going to kill the plants with too much humidity and stuff. But am I to understand here that they're facing challenges in court because normal farm practices protection board?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Verbeek. So it's merely a tribunal, the Normal Farm Practices Protection Board, and there were some initial appeals, I think 3 that were filed against the initial version of the Leamington bylaw, on the premise that the use of these lights in the agricultural operation of these greenhouses should be considered a normal farm practice, and if the tribunal were to agree that this was a normal farm practice, a key provision in that act is that any municipal bylaws attempting to regulate would be of no effect. So I don't have intimate knowledge of the appeals. I believe 1 is still pending. 2 were settled, as I understand it. And since that time,
So through you, Madam Chair, so they had to back off because of the challenges. And so
I don't know. I can't speak to that.
why it's still purple and orange over there?
Yeah, to my knowledge, we don't have details of the settlements themselves. But a short period of time after, I believe those settlements were, at one point, they were scheduled for hearing with the Normal Farm Practices Protection Board. And before those went to like a full hearing, the two of the matters were withdrawn. I don't have the particulars on the third matter, but a period of time after that, Leamington amended their bylaw. So presumably they amended as a result perhaps of those challenges.
Councilor Verbeek?
Madam Chair, I'm grateful to start with this, but I feel like it's a start, as even OMAFRA has outlined for us in their closing summaries. Like there's too many pieces to this puzzle that need to be solved still. I would certainly in the future be supportive of taking the stance that Chatham, Kent, and Lakeshore did for a little while until we can, as OMAFRA recommends, let a little more of the science and technology lead us. But I appreciate this and I would be supporting.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Legal and Legislative Service 2022-42, 2023 Trap Neuter Release and Spay Neuter Voucher Program. Looking for a mover that Legal and Legislative Services report be received and that a spay neuter voucher program for feral cats be committed to for 2023 and 2024, maximum up to 175 vouchers per year, and that any used funds from prior years for the spay and neuter programs be transferred to reserve to offset trap neuter release programs in the future. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor McGuire Blaze, Councillor Hammond, any questions? Let's just go to, in advance of questions, let's go to Deputy Clerk, Ms. Brown, please.
Thank you. And through the chair, I won't speak on this for a really long time, but I just kind of wanted to give council some background on this. So this program came back, well, it's actually two parts. There's a spay neuter voucher program that was introduced in around 2013, 2014 by the director at that time. And that was to help families and to encourage spay and neutering of cats. So that's to help families that to help to subsidize some of that cost. So a resident can come in, they submit an application, and they can receive up to 3 per year. Each one is worth $75. And that's for any residents. We'll issue a maximum of 175 per year. So that's for the spay and neuter voucher program. That, as you can see by the stats, it's been very successful. Now, given with COVID, it has gone down a little bit, but the numbers are starting to come back up again this year. As far as the TNR program, the trap, neuter, and release, or some people say return program, this is another one that was introduced a little bit later, back in 2015. And this really is to address what we affectionately call farm cats. And that is where we've got a really, really, really solid group of volunteers that come out and they trap these on their own time, no compensation whatsoever. On their own time, they trap these cats, they bring them in, they get them fixed, spayed or neutered, and then they return them. That's part of the trap neuter that you have. The cats are returned, because that in a sense is their home. Again, usage has gone down, but it's coming back up again. So what I'm looking for right now is pre-budget approval for 2023 and 2024. We're coming up into a breeding season for cats, and so that we can keep up on this great work that's been done over the years. I'd like to I'm asking for that pre-budget approval so that we can keep those volunteers out there.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Any comments to the report? Seeing none, Councillor Meady.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say that in my neighborhood, a few years ago, we had a horrible cat problem. And when this vouchers came into place, there was different residents that were taking upon themselves to do just this, and they trapped and neutered the cats and re-released them in the neighborhood. And now we're actually seeing quite a reduction, and there's more rabbits and possums and stuff out playing. So so this is really working. It's a really great thing. I just wanted to say that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mady. I agree. I think it's a great program, and I'm really in support of the pre-budget approval, because if we're going to do it, we have to do it early before there's kittens. So looking to see all those in favor of the recommendation. Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried unanimously. Legal and Legislative Services 2022-43 report of the striking committee. That Legal and Legislative Services report be received, and that we recommend the committee and the board appointments made by the Town of Essex Striking Committee be confirmed by council, and that bylaw 2215 being a bylaw to establish and appoint the Town of Essex boards and committee for this term of council be read a first and second time and finally passed today, December 19th. Looking for a mover. Councillor Hammond, and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Shepley. I just want to say that the striking committee had a lot of good deliberations, and we tried to make sure that we had each councillor's one of their number ones or number twos, and it was at times very difficult, but I thought really fruitful, and we'll see a lot of new faces on our committees this term of council. So it was pretty exciting, and I'm excited to see what our committees are going to do for the next 4 years. Any questions? Councillor Verbeek.
Chair, can you just mention that there's still several committees that have vacancies? If there's anybody that thinks they missed the deadline, we'd really like to just, is it going to be on our website? They can find the vacancies? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Verbeek, that's a good idea. I believe I think heritage and accessibility, we'll get that list out there. So all in favor? That's carried unanimously. County Council update. Looking to see if we have a County Council update from our Deputy Mayor.
Email, but for everyone else, on December 7th, we had our county council meeting. We approved the budget for the most part, everything but the library board, which they're going to come back to us on that. But the budget was for 117 million. That was passed. There was a proposed budget increase, or tax increase of 4.76%. We did get it down to 3.81%. I know that's not what everybody wants to hear, but at the time it was the best we could come up with. We are starting some roadwork projects, County Road 50 to Ferris and Eiler, County Road 50 from Wright Road to Dehimda Road, and paved shoulder on County Road 50 right to Dehimda, and culvert rehab, County Road 50 and Tom Wright Drain. That's my report.
I will say that it was really challenging being our first county council meeting and then having that as a budget meeting. So I'm glad that's over. And yeah, it was quite difficult, but I think we did the best we could. In January, EMS Chief Bruce Crowder will be bringing a report back on the state of HR and EMS in terms of, 12 have come back, 12 of being hired, 12 paramedics are hired, but how many left in the last year? So talking about some HR issues there or solutions. And also, when we were sitting in budget and looking at places to cut. And the former warden, Gary McNamara, found us some cost savings in terms of putting less money into the hospital reserve. But when we started, there were some council members from other municipalities that wanted to talk about road cuts. And I thought to myself that, the county hasn't been crazy about County Road 50 going west. So I didn't want to raise my hand and start cutting any of the county roads, because if we did, I fear that County Road 50 and the paved trail that we wanted would have been one of the first to go. So unfortunately, we do have, a 3.84 tax increase. But the good thing is that what has been so important to this council in the past is that trail. And so we're getting a section there. And then we did talk about external commitments. So the county has external commitments that they fund, whether it's Invest Windsor Essex or TWEPI or, doctor recruitment. And those are things that I think this term of council, county council, will look hard at and see what we can cut. Because we do know the county has a AAA credit status. That's awesome. We do know the county does a pay-as-you-go philosophy for roads. So, you don't really want to take away their pay-as-you-go. You don't want to take away their awesome credit rating. But can we look at some of these external commitments that are taking, millions from the budget? So no doubt we have a lot of work to do. And, 4.76 is really high. 3.84 is still high, but we are getting, I believe, the county staff and the county council have done a good job in terms of asset management, roads, and HR issues. So I supported the budget as well. Okay, correspondence to be received. Town will receive all of the correspondence here in item 13.1, and then if anyone wants to pull any out, looking for a motion to receive. Deputy Mayor Shepley and Councillor Verbeek. Any questions to any of those particular, actually, let's vote on them and then we'll go back, okay? All in favor of those? That is carried. I didn't see any opposed. That's carried unanimously. And Councillor Verbeek, did you want to pull one out?
Yeah, Mayor, yes, I did. And I'll stick to just one because it's getting late. 13.1.4.3. Just the city of Toronto, their city council has requested the province to extend the commenting period for Bill 23. More Homes Built Faster Act 2022. Just to enable more consultation and consideration of alternative options and through analysis, both short and long-term impacts. Our administration was on the ball, as always, head and shoulders above other municipalities with getting these comments in on this bill. It was a really tough sell. I mean, it was during the municipal election and our administration picked up on that and they acted on our behalf, and that's great. But there's 444 other municipalities. And if we've been paying attention to the correspondence there's a bit of an outcry out there. So I would hope that this council would support the city of Toronto because of the 444 municipalities. Not all of them were, got their correspondence in the way we did.
To receive and support the city of Toronto. Okay, looking for a seconder. Deputy Mayor Shepley, I would like to make a friendly amendment if we could. During the last meeting, our director of Development Services wrote a letter as well. And I would like to see if council would support sending that letter to the county so that it can be also discussed at the county.
I accept the amendment.
Okay with the seconder? Okay. Any further comments? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. To this correspondence. Councillor Verbeek.
I through you, Madam Mayor, upon reading it, I went through it a couple of times and this woman says that she's a breeder. They're not going to get any more dogs, but could 3 of their dogs continue to be breeding and moving them along? Do we know this?
Question to,
okay.
I will defer this question to Ms. Brown.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Verbeek. So she is a former breeder. She no longer breeds the dogs. She has had them since they were born. They were as part of some of her litters. Within that package, there is an endorsement from our animal control officer. I did want to highlight that. But she has committed to, she's no longer breeding animals anymore.
For that, I will say during the election, I've knocked on a lot of doors and there are a lot of homes in our town, 3 dogs. So I'm grateful that she's coming forward in the proper channels. If there's any more comments, if not, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing, do you want that noted? No, okay, that is carried. 13.2.2 Rural Ontario Municipalities Association Board of Directors call for nominations 2023 to 2027. That council endorsed Mayor Sherry Bondi for the position of Roma Zone 1. So I'm just looking to see if I could get a council resolution because I'd like to run for this position, whether I don't know if I have a chance to get it or not, but I'll try. It's currently empty. Supported by Councillor McGuire Blaze, seconded by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. We have no committee meeting minutes, nothing under financial, nothing brought to our attention under new business, no notices of motion. Mr. OJ? No, okay. Reports and announcements from council members. I believe I started at that side last time, so I will start at this side this time. Councillor Guerin.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone. Spend some quality time with friends and family. It's probably the best part of my holiday.
Mr. Hammond? Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Ditto.
Councillor Verbeek.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Councillor McGuire Blaze.
Tired, but Merry Christmas. And I just wanted to say the Christmas market that happened in the park down there in Essex Center, Heritage Park, thank you. It was a humongous success. So I just want to congratulate the entire team who put that together and the support from the town and all of the sponsors in Essex and surrounding area and everybody who participated to make the event so great. I don't think anyone ever anticipated it to be as big and successful as it was, but it was really great. So I look forward to second annual Santa's Village. Thank you.
McGuire Blaze, you did a lot of work on that and it was awesome. It didn't even feel like Essex. It felt like Frankenmuth. So a report for myself, I would like to wish our Director of Legal and Legislative Services clerk best wishes in his move from the municipality of Essex to Tecumseh. Thank you for 7 hard years of hard work here, and we appreciate everything you've done, helping us in our council meetings, creating bylaws, and just the legal support that you've had for us. So you're certainly going to be missed, and you have some big shoes to fill here, whoever takes on. Oh, I will go to the bylaws. Yes. Okay. Oh. Okay. It is really hard. It is really hard remembering about the 2 counselors on the screen all the time. So you guys just need to come back. All right. And so just, yeah, for myself, that's my announcement tonight. So Councillor Mady, and then we'll go to Councillor Allard.
Thank you. Of course, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to everybody. It looks like we'll get a chance to get to the new year, but also I think we should all try to get out to Roma then. They're January 22nd, 24th, I believe it is. And maybe, continue our support for our mayor. Thanks.
Councillor Mady. Councillor Allard.
Thank you, through the mayor. I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. And one thing I want to add is the mayor and deputy mayor and myself went to the Heritage Village and met with the board. They have a great look now with the new poles that we donated from the Harrow Streetscapes. They're very grateful for them. Looks nice. They will take a lot of help in promoting and supporting their coming events. They didn't say of any particular, but they wanted us to look at them and make sure we support and promote them. Their diner is open 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Thursday to Sunday. Great food. That's all I got. Thanks.
For Allard and Counselor Mady, and I apologize profusely. So any announcements to CAO Suite? Do you want a Merry Christmas announcement? We are working on a holiday video too, so you'll have to tune in and catch that. CAO Suite.
Ronnie, on behalf of all the town and residents, we want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And again, on behalf of all the staff, we also want to congratulate Mr. OJ for all your work with the town. We'll be missed, but we appreciate everything done.
Thank you. On to bylaws. 19.1. Bylaws that require a third and final reading. Bylaw 2206 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the December 5th meeting. Looking for a mover. Counselor Hammond, supported by Counselor Guerin. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. Bylaw 2203 being a bylaw to provide an emergency response plan to the corporation of the town of Essex. To be read a third and final time, passed finally on December 19th. Looking for a mover. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Counselor Hammond. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. Bylaws that require a first, second, and third reading. Bylaw 2217 being a bylaw to enter an agreement with the Humane Society for the intake of stray cats for the town of Essex. Looking for a mover. Counselor or Deputy Mayor Shepley and Counselor Verbeek. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. Bylaw 2216 being a bylaw to appoint an acting clerk in the town of Essex. Looking for a mover. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Counselor McGuire Blaze. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. Carried unanimously. Being a bylaw for a first and second reading, bylaw 2213 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of December 19th, regular council meeting. To be read a first and second time. Looking for a mover. Counselor Hammond, seconder. Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any questions? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Motion to, well, we have some future meetings. I believe we have one on the 9th of January too. Oh, no? Okay. Monday, January 16th, we have a special council meeting, draft plan of subdivision, and January 16th, our regular council meeting. But for now, it's Christmas. We're gonna motion to adjourn. Counselor Guerin, Counselor Guerin, Counselor Hammond, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. Carried unanimously. Cool.